All right. Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock and I'd like to call together the February 7th, 2024 school committee meeting. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This evening we have a consent agenda posted, the minutes from the January 25th, 2024 meeting, as well as the bills and payroll. Is there a motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
Motion made by Bino and second by Stacy. So I heard her first, sorry. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. We'll mark that unanimous. This is our first opportunity for interested citizens. So if there's anybody with us this evening that would like to discuss anything with the school committee or anybody on Zoom, that would be your first chance. There's a chance at the end of the meeting as well. No one here. Okay. Next up, we've got a recognition portion of the evening, and I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Clenchey.
Sure. I have a couple of recognitions this evening. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate the Littleton High School varsity boys indoor track team. They took the Mid-Watch League for the 5th year in a row, which is very impressive. So congratulations to the coaches and the players. On Tuesday evening, excuse me, we had the music department put on their annual all-town band concert. So always jam-packed, hard to find a parking spot. I'd like to thank our music directors and our performers for just a wonderful evening. It's so powerful to see our grade 5s playing instrument for the first time, and then finishing the evening with every performer playing at once, and the progress they make during their time with this is truly incredible. We have a very strong music program, and years ago we had one music teacher, Mrs. Bridge, and now we have 3. So we are growing, and town and myself and staff are very proud of the music program. So yeah, congratulations. And that's it for me.
Perfect. All right, next up we have FinCom School Committee Representative appointment. Heard from Mike Crew, he's on his way, so we'll skip that portion of the meeting. We will move on to our first presentation, which is a financial update. Business Manager Steve Mark will provide an update.
My broken record, I guess, line. Report is on the screen. We're in good shape. Not anticipating any shortfalls this year. Everything looks like it's on track. No surprises yet. Again, we've had a relatively mild winter, so utilities. We're still paying more than we used to because the rates are still up, but we're on track with utilities as well. So glad to answer any questions or provide additional information.
Anything that jumps out at you, Steve, in terms of, I know that when we presented to the select board and the finance committee, we talked about a couple line items in our current budget where year over year we're experiencing increased expenses, and we're looking for some more appropriated funds to cover those. But is there anything that you have your eye on that you think we're going to run up against this year? Or?
Not particularly, not that we can't handle within some other savings within the budget. Yeah.
I'm just curious if the transportation and bus costs have been what we expected, or has there been some?
Yep, it's right on track. We have a contract, so we knew what that was.
Okay.
We know $1.2 million something for the year. We know we're going to have to potentially dip into school choice funds to fund some of that.
Yeah.
We're looking for efficiencies within the budget so we can not tap into school choice if possible, and have those funds available for a future date. But right now we will probably still tap into school choice for some of those transportation costs. Again, we're watching other lines to see if we have some savings potentially. Maybe in the utilities, because it has been a relatively mild year. So yeah. But yeah, everything's right on track. Our special ed transportation we're in good shape. I think we've had to contract out, Lynn can probably tell, we've had to contract out, for a few non-case providers, because Case wasn't able to handle them, but, those are within the budget. We always budget a little bit for that too, so.
And Case is always looking to absorb the money, even if they can't start them when we need them.
Yeah,
They're always still, if there's an opening, then we'll take over that.
yeah, Case is a really good partner for us. So. Anything else?
Nothing else for me.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for the update. So Mike will be here soon. We're gonna run into a situation where we're gonna start a presentation that Mike's gonna show up, and I had kind of promised him we'd get him in and out because he's got some other responsibilities this evening, but I guess I don't have any other choice. Could we start with the middle school and high school character education presentations, and then would you mind if we kind of pause and, yeah, time out? Great. A little unorthodox, but
That's all right.
ahead of time, if we know that ahead of time, we're okay with that?
Yep.
All right, we're gonna hear from Principal Everhart or Harrington, or what you would like to lead.
No.
Same,
I
yeah,
think it's something to deserve it first. I will step back a little bit. I'm fine, but I did have COVID earlier this weekend, so. I'm here to talk about our advisory program. We call it Connections. It's not the same thing as the Connection series that we do as a district, but there's something that, you want me to wait?
might as well.
All right.
Yes.
All right, I knew that was gonna happen.
That's all right.
So,
Perfect timing.
perfect timing. All right, so, we have, FinCom, school committee representative, interview and appointment. This is Mike Prue. He's expressed interest currently. Well, per policy, there are 2 seats on the finance committee. There are school committee appointment. Both seats are currently being served. Tyler Gray, his term was up. It must have been May 2023, and agreed to continue until we find a replacement. So I want to welcome Mike, who's expressed interest. He emailed us sort of a cover letter explaining his qualifications and his backgrounds. And if you wouldn't mind just sort of reintroducing yourself, the school committee might have a couple questions, maybe kind of regurgitate for the public what your experience has been in town and
Sure.
and why you're looking to get involved.
Yeah, so I have 3 young kids. Actually, they're in 3 different schools. This will be the only year that happens. So I have my daughter's at Russell Street, and then my son's in the middle school, and then my oldest is a freshman in the high school. So like I said in my letter, I'm not a banker. I'm not a treasurer or anything like that, but I think the biggest asset that I can bring to the finance committee is that I pay attention. I pay attention to what's going on in town, from the sewer to the developments that are going up. I reluctantly sat through the 6-hour FinCom meeting they had with the select board Saturday, just so I could, if you guys do send me, I'm up to speed and ready to go. In my job, I'm a consultant in the pharmaceutical industry, and I lead teams on occasion, and when that is the case, I'm, tasked with maintaining the budget for our project. So, I do understand budgets and how they work, and, the towns need to stick to the budget, and, I know you guys had to make some cuts this time around. So I understand, the give and take of, the town departments trying to get, their capital projects funded and just their day-to-day operations. So, yeah, I think that's what I have to offer.
Great. Any questions for Mike?
I don't have any questions. I think you are very involved and have some very sound input for the community, so I think you'd be a good candidate for it.
Thanks.
Appreciate you volunteering the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can just share for the other committees' benefit. I mean, Mike, our paths have crossed a couple times of sports and things like that, and I would say Mike is probably one of the top 10 most informed citizens in the world.
I don't know if that's a good.
Yeah, I don't know if
For
it's a good
this.
thing either, but it would be a good thing for this
You
job.
can put me to use.
Yeah, So, I'm excited that you were interested. I thank you in advance. I look forward to sort of working more closely with the school committee appointment on the finance committee. So, again, thank you very much. We will be well informed through you, and we should have an open line of communication.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the term is good through May of 2026. So,
Okay.
Do your best you can to try to hang on that long.
Have you had a chance to talk to Tyler Gray about what the time commitment is? You sound like a busy guy.
No, I haven't, but I mean, I've sat on, so I was on the Parks and Rec Commission, and not as I guess consequential as a finance committee, but I was chair for 5 years, and it was time consuming. And to be honest, that was one of the reasons why I didn't run again, is because I had to take care of some things with my family and didn't want to stretch myself too thin. But my kids are older now. My youngest is 9, so they're in with my boys being older, I have that flexibility to get out of the house like tonight when I need to. So it's, I mean, things have, with my kids being older, I have the bandwidth. I'm not worried.
Well, I appreciate that. Like, I appreciate you waiting until you had the bandwidth and then jumping in when you did. It's and that's true. When kids get older, they don't want to be with you so
Yeah,
much. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So thank you very much for doing this and
You're welcome.
stepping up.
I did speak with Tyler, so he's aware, and he was also very willing to sit down, grab a cup of coffee, catch you up on some meat and everything like that. So
Yeah, okay.
the handoff should be pretty smooth.
Okay.
Okay.
Is this like immediate or?
Yeah, I mean, it would be, we'll motion and point you this evening.
Okay,
And-
any thought to them getting through the budget first? Because I mean, I've been paying attention, but I would feel uncomfortable.
Tyler felt like it
Voting on
was
anything.
enough work to be done still,
Okay.
where the handoff now would be appropriate. I asked him the same
All right.
question, like, would it make more sense if you guys got through the budget cycle and then Mike stepped in? He's like, yeah, we don't have everything figured out just yet. This
Yeah.
would be an interesting time and a good time for you to sort of get involved, so.
Okay,
You can pick it up as soon as you like.
all right, I'll get right into it then.
You do have to go to the town clerk's office.
Right.
It's one in this
Yeah.
way.
Okay. Do you send the clerk notification?
Yes.
And then
We do.
I usually hear from her.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great, awesome.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much. Thank you. All right. Seeing as we have no other candidates and Mike's extremely qualified. Is there a motion, or would you like me to make the motion? I will move to appoint Mike Prue as the finance committee school representative from February 24 through May 26.
I second.
A motion made and second, and all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, we'll mark that unanimous. All right, fill that seat. All right, now you're back up.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
You
Those-
know, you've done it right when it just happens on its own. I have to ask for it. Yeah.
That didn't feel authentic.
No, it's good. No, I mean, I'm trained, you're being trained.
Okay.
Association, I'm seeing it to applause. For applauding. So this, the connections program is something that we devised at the middle school because there's a long history of an advisory program, but we could never find a way to really make it work for us. There are a lot of canned programs that are great for elementary schools and high schools, but there really isn't a lot for middle schoolers out there. And so knowing that, having taught in a district where they build their schools around the advisory model, trying to figure out how I could bring that to the middle school. And so I really sat down with my assistant principal, Matt Levangi, and we really talked about, from our own teaching experiences, what is it that worked really well with advisory, and what are the things that we found to be an obstacle for teachers. And, I'd always had a love-hate relationship with advisory when I was a teacher. When it went well and you had a great group, it was awesome. And when it wasn't, it could be tough. And so how do we try and manage that so that even with those tough groups, we can facilitate some of these conversations and some of these relationships. And so the whole purpose of what we're doing is to build that positive, supportive relationship. There's I know we did it in a district that I worked in one time, and I know plenty of others do, where they'll put up every name of every student in the school on the walls on big chart paper, and they give you stickers, and you go around and you put stickers next to the names of kids that you have a really good relationship. And what we see is that some kids have tons of stickers, and there are some kids that have none. And it's heartbreaking when you see the names of kids and not a single adult has a decent relationship with them. And so this is what drives me when we're talking about advisory, are those kids that show up every day, go through their day and go home and no one talks to them and no adult connects with them. And I just think at that time of their lives, it saddens me to think that that's the case. And so we're trying to find a way to build those relationships and do it in a way that's effective for both staff and students. And so to address that, we really wanted to look at a few things: preparation, the comfort of educators, the student participation, and reflection. One of the things that I think all teachers struggle with when it comes to advisory is getting to work in the morning, I forgot to plan for advisory. And then they're rushing, and it turns out it's probably not much, or it's just a throwaway thing. We wanted teachers to be more mindful and thoughtful about what we're doing. And so what we did is decided, okay, we will do the preparations. We will create our own program. And so that a teacher shows up that morning, they don't even have to prepare for it. They can literally just open the book and it's right there. It doesn't require any prerequisite knowledge or understandings or what happened last week or the week before. They're all self-contained lessons that deal with a certain idea or a theme. But the idea is for discussions to happen. And so if we take the preparation part out of it, now we have teachers, we can say, listen, well, you didn't have to prep anything. It's in a binder, it's right there. There's no reason that you can't just open up and go. So to try and take that off the table. We've also found that some educators really struggle with those kind of deeper connections and those deeper relationships, especially when you start talking about race, gender, these kind of things that some just don't feel like they're either knowledgeable enough or have that skill set to be able to navigate that conversation. And so we try to layer these things so that for educators that want to go much deeper and have those richer conversations, that opportunity is there. For those that just either aren't there themselves or the group is just not willing to go there, that there are places that they can still have some of the same experiences without having to really get kids to take risks if they're not ready at this point. So what we want to do is use these connections and really get students to start to build empathy. Most middle schoolers don't develop empathy until really about 8th grade. 6th graders, 7th graders, they have sympathy and they start to develop empathy, but we don't really see it until those later years. So what we want to do is start that process in what we're doing so that students see each other as people and not just a kid in their class and really start to connect. And so if we can develop that empathy and deepen that sympathy, then maybe we'll have something between the two. So to do that, we want to use personal and cultural connections to help them share those experiences and those goals. All right, next slide, Steve. So what does it look like? So some of this I just discussed. We assign a topic for each lesson, talking points. If there's a video there to kind of get things kickstarted, we have links. It's all set up so that it's all ready to go. What we want though is for educators and their advisories to develop their own style. In a perfect world, they would start with this, use some of our lessons, and then take off on their own as the groups begin to come together and share. And so what we hope to do is have some bare bones to this, that the lessons that we do and eventually that they do, they're repeatable and predictable. We want our advisories to have a consistency to them. So it's not always, unknown when they're going to walk in. For some kids, having that predictable format is what they need to feel comfortable and safe. And if every day is, a different kind of excitement, then they may not be willing to do that. So the goal is to have fun, but we also want to have that moment where we challenge kids to take a little bit of a risk, maybe some of those, low floor, low ceiling kind of things and build it up as we go along. We want them to face each other in a circle, right? That eye to eye, that face-to-face contact as opposed to staring at a screen or on their phone or at the walls. We really feel like that eye to eye contact is really necessary to develop empathy and sympathy. And use their names. It's getting kids to use their names. You'd be surprised in such a little district when kids come up from 5th grade to 6th grade, how many kids don't know each other. And so, because they've been with a cohort for so long that they're still learning those names. So getting kids to know and use those names is really important. So we want everybody to have a chance to participate. And that's really the important part. We don't want one child, and we all have those, who could run the whole conversation themselves. It's really about trying to get some kids to pull back and other kids to feel like they can share. So next slide. So how do we know that this is working? If we can get students talking with the teacher and other students, I'll be honest, that's the big one right there. Some kids just do not want to share in middle school. They're just either too nervous or they're insecure or whatever it might be. They don't know the teacher well enough. So if you can get a middle schooler who's reticent to begin talking and sharing, well, that right there, then the floodgates open to all kinds of things. So that's the first big thing. Next, can we get them to share personal information, whether it's cultural or family information, things that humanize them to their classmates, as opposed to just what they did this weekend or a video game that they liked or a movie they saw, giving us something real to be able to hold on to and use that as a topic for discussion as we move forward. Hopefully then we start to see that increase in empathy from students and teachers. And then what we'd like to see is that spill over into the lesson planning and the curriculum. UDL, the whole idea is to be able to use students' experiences and cultural backgrounds to make learning relevant, to provide choice and opportunities. We're hoping that advisory will help begin that process so that as teachers become more familiar with the students in front of them, they can use those experiences to be able to bring it to the classroom and make it just more relevant for all students as we move through it. So those are our big indicators as we move forward. If we're doing those 4 things, then we're doing something right. Last one, Steve, or is that it? That might be it. Any questions?
So I think I missed this in the beginning. Is this homegrown? You and Matt are writing this?
Yeah,
Good for you.
we sat down the first year that he was hired, and that was my charge over the summer. This is what I want to create this. I worked in a school where advisory was 5 days a week, and we found that just to be way too long. Teachers, kids, it's a lot of investment to try and maintain that momentum and focus. It just doesn't work. When I started, it was 1 day a week, and that was just too short. There wasn't enough investment for 1 day. So we found the 2 days to be a sweet spot, the Tuesday, Thursday combination. And so we're really happy with where it's going. And it's always fun, I'll be honest. Not every teacher does it with fidelity the way you'd like. But if we can get that momentum going and we start to have success and other teachers doing it and getting to talk about some of the lessons they've done. This year, we had teachers rewrite some of those lessons in UDL format with the idea that, oh my God, my lesson that I created is going to be taught by somebody else in another class to help sort of up that game. So we're trying to find ways to get teachers to do this, maybe with a little gentle nudge, to be able to create their own lessons as they do it. But yeah, we sat down and using lessons that we've done in other schools and other programs, very little of it is original. A lot of it is just the coming together of what we know to be really good middle school content and saving the stuff because if the kids find it too babyish, they won't do it. If it's too deep, they'll pull back. And so that threading that needle it's difficult when you don't have a lot of content to rely on.
Well, I'm interested in your idea about having them share in a circle because coincidentally, I just did that yesterday in a teacher training and I gave them accountable talk stems. So they had to build off of what previous speaker had said. And, I had the talk stems projected and it's a little awkward, but it really made people listen to each other. So you don't end up with that parallel talk where people are just waiting for their turn to say something and aren't building on. And you use the person's name. So like, I agree with so-and-so and would like to add on, or I respectfully disagree with so-and-so. And it was the first run for me on that strategy and it worked out beautifully. I was very psyched about it. So
and that takes comfort and trust, and that you build over time.
Which was, this is the first time I've met these teachers. It was like, oh, phew. But I think that speaks to the power of the protocol. If you're asking people to use each other's names and providing them with a structure to build off of what people say.
And they might seem like little things and like common sense, but to 12-year-olds, they're not always. And so having to build those structures for that to happen, and then through admin support and teacher investment to become that. So, we will continue to supplement. We created like 2 years worth of these so that somebody couldn't go back and be like, oh, I did this last year. Well, here you go. Here's a supplement of more of them. So we're trying to keep it to the point where now people can start to branch off. So
kudos to you. That's really impressive.
it was a lot of work. It was a
Yeah.
lot of work, but it's paying off and it will continue to do so. And so as we start to get more success with it, hopefully we see more teachers do it the way that we want. The tight circle, some people just have to build up to that. Some kids and teachers just aren't quite comfortable sitting in that tight circle of 12. But as long as they start in a circle and begin to move forward, with those kinds of things, like we certainly are okay with that. We'd rather have somebody take baby steps than no steps. So
Thank you.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
One is, how are the advisory groups created, selected, and then paired with a teacher? What is that process?
So there've been a number of iterations of it over the years that I was there. What we decided this last 2 or 3 years, there were times we didn't start advisory until October, and we found it was just too late to start, right? The momentum of the year has already begun, and then to say, hey guys, we're gonna do something, we're gonna completely change your mornings and we're gonna do this, it was clunky. There was one year we waited until January to start, and that definitely was. And so how do you figure that out? So what we did is but we also don't want to do it the first day because we don't, especially in 6th grade, we don't know the kids. And for those kids going to 7th grade, for example, we're not quite sure how some of those groupings work. So what we do is we take the first couple of weeks and then we let teachers sit down and create the groups based on what they know to be true of who they think will work well together, who's a good fit for what teacher. And the other part of this is everybody has an advisor. Our TAs all have advisory, our counselor, everybody has one, so that we're all sharing the load. I took one for the longest time, but it gets to be too busy in the morning sometimes, so we'll be there to help. If somebody's absent, for example, Matt or I will come in and cover somebody's advisory and try and run, so even we do it. But outside of that, everybody in the building, if you're there, you have an advisory.
So
And
it's
that's
pretty
the other part too, is getting everybody involved, not just the classroom teachers.
It's very intentional grouping.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's intentional.
And then my second question, I'm really just curious to hear your opinion. I have no hidden agenda and I've never taught middle school, so I don't know. But what do you think about like affinity groupings for advisory?
Explain more.
Like race-based groupings?
Well, given our level of diversity, that would be. we
Well,
would
I
find
think
that-
more for the children of color, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Have you had an experience with that? Does that work? Does that not work well?
We haven't tried it here. My experience as an educator, I don't want to straddle the line of saying, okay, you're a student of color, so you're automatically put into a group, right? Because I don't necessarily know what that looks like. Some kids may want to be with other kids. I get the idea, and we've certainly had the discussion over the years around, some people wanted to do it around gender, and some people wanted to do it based on personal experiences. We had somebody ask if we could do it by like children of divorce. Could they be a group because they all have a common experience? So we
Yeah.
definitely explored these things. We just haven't discovered the way that we could do it, that it wouldn't look like we were segregating one group of kids
Yeah,
to be in a group.
yeah, no,
But
it's not easy.
No.
I know times where it works, times where it doesn't work.
Yeah,
And affinity doesn't necessarily just mean race. I just gave an example.
yeah,
right?
but even those groups, like even whatever might
Single
be,
parent, yeah.
yeah,
Different types.
some kids may not want to share that, right, or whatever, so.
Yeah.
So we've kicked it around over the years, but we've never really found a way that we felt like worked for us.
Yeah.
I have a few questions
Mm-hmm.
too, and kind of in line with, was saying, do the kids have any choice as to who they're grouped with, or is that something the staff really navigates through and then they just kind of get assigned with the group?
There was one year they let the kids choose their own groups, and it worked great. If you were in a group of kids that were excited and into it, I had a group, my first year assistant principal, I had the group of kids that should never be together. And it was an interesting show every Friday afternoon. So we sometimes will do it if there's a student whose voice or their family has voiced a particular concern around like real anxiety or insecurity, and like my child has no one to talk to. So we take that into consideration, but we don't throw it open to say everybody gets a friend.
Right.
The management of that would be almost impossible for us to do. But for those families and those students that ask, we try to accommodate as much as we can.
Yeah, that's great. And I want to say I really appreciate your work on this, to focus on this. Really
Sure.
creates a good community bond for the staff and the students. And I think that will show through as the kids are going through the whole middle school and into the high school, and
Yeah.
when they're coming back, hopefully to teach at the school. Like you guys said, a lot of students come back. This just really strengthens that bond that they have with the district. So I really appreciate
And
your.
it's funny,
time
in
and
team
effort.
meetings and things like that, it'll come up where somebody will be like, oh yeah, I have a kid in my advisory. And I offer something an insight that maybe we didn't know because it was something that was shared. So thank you for that.
Yeah, those are lasting.
We
and
try and
motivating students. I
We're
really
starting,
appreciate it.
we're seeing the benefits of it, so.
Thank you.
I think this is really cool. I was curious about what it looks like for this, it doesn't work for a particular student. So, I've got a middle school student, there are certain teachers' names that are in conversations within my house, and I know connections are being made and that's all good stuff, but I don't hear about some other teachers. So the connection's probably, not as good,
Right.
but that's okay. There are other connections that are taking place. I'm just wondering in the group of 12, after some time, does the advisory leader ultimately say, I haven't been able to get anything out of students A, B, or C?
Right.
Do we then look to other faculty, other staff members to say, could someone, find the student, and try to make a connection, because it's just not working. Maybe it's the setting of the students, or maybe it's the subject matter that person teaches and they're just uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, what do we do do we ever look to try
Yeah.
to sort of get a passing grade out of, like a mental passing grade out of everybody in terms of
Yeah.
participation?
I mean, some teachers are more naturally warm and welcome than others, and kids pick up on that. One of the things that we've talked about is, should we shuffle the advisories at some point in time if we start to see those? We never really could come to a determination whether that would be better or worse than what we're doing. One of the things that we try to impress upon teachers is, think about this like in your classroom. If you're running a lesson and 2 or 3 kids just aren't getting it every time, at some point in time you have to address the lesson planning and say, okay, what am I not doing in this lesson? I really need to target maybe these 3 kids first, and everybody else will follow. So trying to flip the script a little bit on the educators to say, okay, you have these 3, create advisory that they're going to love or they're going to be into, and the others will come along. And so trying to, rather than shuffling the deck on everything, just trying to change the perspective at which some of these lessons are planned. If after that it still becomes a problem, we've switched kids and we've moved kids around because there's just not a connection. We try not to do it, because once word gets out,
Sure.
and then we have 300 kids who want to change. But we have accommodated that in the past and continue to do so. If
Yeah.
there's just really a oil and water, or just this person just doesn't get me and I don't feel like they want to, we certainly want to accommodate as much as we can.
Good answer, by the way. I wasn't necessarily suggesting that like a change be made, but it was more like a checking with other staff members to say, hey, does anybody have a strong connection with Jacob, for example? Because I can't get him out of his shell in advisory, just like some affirmation that there is a connection being made.
We've actually had that kind of discussion in 8th grade a few weeks ago, when one person's advisory she's like, I'm doing everything I can, but I can't get them out. And that was a discussion. What do you know about this kid? What's the hook with this kid? How do you get them? So those conversations do happen, colleague to colleague. So we'll continue to see. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks.
I agree with Jason. I just want to add on to what he said. So I would say, and to go to the point, the last question related to changing advisors, our students, who want to understand a group still by alphabet, that's how we've been doing it. We do make changes. In fact, just last week, we made a change. We have a new teacher at the school. The student is a sophomore, had a previous advisory teacher, had a connection, wasn't really working for the whole dynamic. And we just made a change just last week. So we are open to those types of changes when they're necessary, either because of it's just not connecting, it's not working with that particular advisory teacher, or there's peer conflict. That's probably the more frequent one. The connection with the teacher is like very seldom. I think it's more of an issue like, well, but this kid really needs a buddy, or this student is, these 2 girls aren't getting along.
Right.
We need to do something, and it's been, it's been continual. So I just wanted to address that right away. Good. So the next slide.
Yep.
So here's an overview. Tonight, my goal is to provide you with an overview as principal, really specific curriculum questions drilling down to the actual lessons would best be addressed by the advisory teachers themselves. And if that's something the committee would like, we can certainly provide that at a later date. But this is a fairly comprehensive overview, as you got a chance to look at the packet and the slides. So after a review of various SEL curriculum, social emotional learning curriculum, we came up with a consensus around launching Character Strong. Character Strong is a national organization. They have sort of prepackaged, pretty much plug and play lessons ready to go. So it's really easy for the teachers to implement. And that was really important for us. That was one of our criteria for selection, is that it wasn't going to be seen as too much an additional prep for teachers, or something that they would find really, taxing in terms of time and just effort to put together. I think Jason spoke well to that already on how he approached it at the middle school with Matt. And so we took the same approach. We had an SEL team, there were students on the team, And we met in the summer and we reviewed various curricula and selected Character Strong. So we're in our first year of implementation. And I'd like to go right to the focus areas, the three main outcomes, and you can see them in the bolded list. A sense of belonging for all students, improving skills that support student well-being, deepening student engagement in their academics in their school and in their community. And these are, areas of focus, but also priority in our school improvement plan. You can see that it's echoed there in some way or another. We had a September 13th early release dedicated to this to make sure that the staff are comfortable with the implementation so it would be an effective launch. So we're underway. Go to the next slide. So there's a number of different approaches we could have taken. I think there's a 25 session version. There's a 20, but maybe a 30 session version. We can go all throughout the year. We selected our advisory. We have a flex block that meets every day, Monday through Friday, but we have a Monday advisory, a Monday flex block that's dedicated to making a connection after the weekend with your advisory teacher. And our students stay with their advisory teacher for all 4 years. They loop. So these connections as the years go by can become quite strong and somewhat emotional actually when they leave at the end of, when they towards graduation time, they'll have special parties and send offs, not just, what kids do that with teams and stuff, but they actually have like special advisory celebrations, especially when they know it's all over after 40 years. So it's another sort of way to help kids transition to post-secondary. There are total 15 sessions throughout the school year. That's what we went with. And here's the structure and style. 30-minute lessons, plug and play, as I mentioned, with interactive Google Slides. There's even video included in this at times. Every lesson has 5 parts: a welcome, community builders, content, to-be list, and closing. So if you wanted to really get at the specifics related to that, you really have to ask the advisory teachers. But the overview continues here. Lessons offer a student choice. There's different activities for grades 9 to 12 that focus on a common theme. And I thought it was important to go right to it. And this is sort of how we introduced it. This was similar information we shared with the parents at the beginning of the year in September. We sent out a message, hey, we're launching this. We gave them a nice sort of letter detailing what we were doing and why. So it makes sense, right? 9th grade theme was belonging. How can we create a place where everyone feels like they belong? 10th grade, well-being. So you can see how this is developmental and appropriate, but also it's different each year so that, our current 8th graders will probably be doing things related to belonging, more likely than not. And maybe we'll choose different sessions based on ones that went really well, because there are a variety of choices for the staff. They can improvise a little bit with their particular group. So we like that too, that ability to be flexible. 10th grade, well-being. How can I cultivate well-being in my life? Of course, in the lives of others. Engagement. What can I do fully to engage my life now that prepared me for a meaningful life after high school? So 11th grade's already thinking about that. And 12th grade, we thought it made sense to focus on leadership. How can we work to build a better world and personal influence, effective teamwork, but also really, how can you do it at the school level and be a good role model for the younger kids? So the next slide, please. This program, like all the SEL curriculum we looked at based on research, the CASEL competencies. CASEL is a well-known organization that has reviews and rates all kinds of social emotional learning curriculum. And like a lot of leadership development programs, corporate sector or nonprofit world, there's a strong focus on emotional intelligence. So this should be familiar areas for some of you who have had any coursework or training in emotional intelligence, and so commonly referred to as EQ, emotional quotient. So we talk about self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, social awareness. This particular visual is on display in pretty much every classroom throughout the building. It's my office, Keith's office. It's on display probably in the hall, some of the halls. We'll have to take a look to see if there's any areas we're missing it. But we wanted to really send sort of it's not quite a subliminal message, but a reminder to folks that these are areas of priority for our school and the type of culture we're trying to cultivate at the high school. So research, of course, supports the effectiveness of social emotional learning. And this is something we've been talking about for a number of years. I think I may have mentioned this at a previous school committee meeting that we probably began this initiative back in 2014, 15, talking about it, looking at it, and looking at different models, trying there's been a lot of schools that have switched their curriculum that they adopted right away, whether it's middle school or high school or elementary. You know, early on, it was sort of a struggle to find something that was appropriate for grades 9 to 12. Jason said there's a lot more out there now, and that's true. But there was a few years back, it was limited and we thought it had limitations that wouldn't really apply to our school. And we believe we found one here in Character Strong that's worth a good effort this year. We did caution our staff and say, well, we can sort of perfectly fine to use the word pilot. Let's see how this goes. We believe in the content behind it and the structure and how the lessons are designed and the activities that are attached to it. But it's possible when we review this at the end of the year, we might say, hey, the feedback wasn't as positive as we would have preferred. Is there something else out there better? But right now, we're pretty sure, we'll collect some survey data, pretty sure we'll go run it for another year. I think it's worth a 2-year sort of trial period to see how it goes. I've had conversations with some students just recently, some student leaders in sophomore class, and they love their advisory and they were actually really complimentary of it. So that was kind of nice to hear that direct feedback from 4 class officers. So next slide, please. So to go over this, I'm going to just give you like an example of a session, a first session. And of course, it makes sense to start with welcome, right? September. The session helps set the stage for the what, the how, and why for this year. And there's a Chinese word, now, that is usually translated as lively, bustling. It refers to a fun, lively place with an inviting vibe that makes you want to be there. This was one of the prompts that the kids had. And what makes a place feel inviting to you? What a great opener for the start of the school year with all the kids. So some of the activities, although there's grade level specific, so a lot of them have things in common across the grade levels that we want to emphasize because it's not necessarily related to the theme, but maybe something just important to know. So welcome was certainly a good one to start with. Next slide, please. I'll just give you a sense of the sessions we've had. I believe we've had up to 10 now. And the last one was just this past Monday. So in 9th grade, we focused on connecting with peers, beginning to build friendships and relationships that are important, their sense of belonging, lay a good foundation. 10th grade focused on getting to know each other better by finding things they have in common. These are discussion activities.
All right.
That's okay. 11th grade focused on discussing in groups ways to make school more engaging. Really important topic. 12th grade worked together to reflect on their high school experience, ways they might help younger students. And I've already kind of spoken about that, but have the younger students have a positive experience. So November, we had a couple of sessions in November and see that up. So this is to-be list rather than to-dos. We were trying to talk about values and things like that and how they would implement or actualize their values. So this session introduces the importance of identifying values, the concept of a to-be list. There's more of a focus on who you are rather than what you do or what you do. That's really what it's about. We are more than what we do, I guess is what I wanted to say. So we wanted to emphasize that in this session. Additionally, this session presents the to-be challenge. So a couple examples, one on the left. Show up to one school event, club, meeting, sports game, activity that you don't normally attend. And then to be appreciative. Some of the advisories are using notebooks where students can record their responses to different prompts in the sessions. And other advisories, the students weren't up for it as much. And the advisory teachers just adapted for that. They said, oh, my kids love to write. One advisory teacher said, yes, I don't. So we let them roll with that, and they had the discretion to roll it out as they know the kids best. They're with them all the time. So especially in the first year, if you're rolling something out new to the seniors, we wanted to have some flexibility there for them because they didn't have this the previous 3 years, and the juniors the previous 2. So to be appreciative, thank one person who has supported your well-being. Be sure to tell them at least one specific way that they have helped you. We did a similar thing with our Great Kindness Challenge. And just a little aside. This is a really wonderful moment where I saw a student walk. One of the challenges was to thank the cafeteria staff. And I saw a young girl, a young student walk through, it must have been 9th grade. She walked through the cafeteria. I was checking with another teacher. It wasn't yet lunchtime. And she hand-delivered personally handwritten thank you notes to each and every cafeteria worker. That was her way of doing it. And she got a round of applause for us, for sure. So that was pretty special. December, introducing perspective to how important is this, especially You know, Jason talked about cultivating empathy beyond sympathy for students. And really, that is deeply rooted in perspective taking, being able to understand what it's like to walk in another person's shoes, what their experiences are like, or were like. And so perspective taking was introduced to teach the importance of building relationships and resolving conflicts. There's a fair amount of work still to do, and I'd grade on that. I would say even in 12th grade. We're all, and even as adults, we're all still struggling with perspective taking, but it's one of the most important things we can be mindful of. Mental health foundations, this session grade 10, I'll go right to grade 11 with understanding ourselves. By looking at ourselves, reflecting, sharing, how we see ourselves and how we see others. A little bit of perspective taking there. And get back to, this is December, back to leadership. And this session, we begin to explore how we can all be positive leaders by influencing others. So that was the grade 12 thing. So you're getting a sense of how this is flowing throughout the year. You can see, I mean, this is all from my standpoint as an educator, but even as a parent, I'm happy to see this in a school, never mind being a principal. It's better as a parent looking, if I was looking into the school and seeing what Littleton High School is doing, I'd say, wow, these are really important topics to cover with kids today. And I don't think, I think I mentioned this last time, I don't think, previous meeting, I don't think I'm gonna ask my Midwatch principals in my Midwatch principal meeting tomorrow, how many of you have an SEL curriculum or any of you using Character Strong? I'll report back at a later date, but I don't think there's, as many, out there, I don't think there's a lot out there. I think we're sort of a trendsetter here. Next one. January, perspective taking, helpful helping. You can take a minute. I'd rather than read the slide to you. I'll just have to take a look at that. Grade 10, values and well-being, a to-be goal. Explore personal well-being ideas. So you see lots of common themes across. Hopefully it's not, what we don't want it to be is overly repetitive. And so there was a teacher who was saying that some of these kids are thinking that's too repetitive at times. So we'll have to look into that. But I only heard that from one teacher. Connecting through the story in these sessions, we think about others, try to understand stories. This one I like a lot, grade 12, pursuing purpose. Purpose is so important for all of us. And in these sessions, we start to work on defining a sense of purpose for ourselves and identify a sense of purpose that combines what we're good at and what we like to do and like to do with something that is needed in our community. What a great activity for students who, many of them are going off to college, but are going off to, some post-secondary place where hopefully they're tapped into a sense of purpose. It means something to them, whatever they're doing next in September. Next, and this was just this week. So in this session, we focused on the grade 9 one was helpful supports. So we focused on ways to ask for, others for help, and how to overcome barriers to seek help or help others. Like the B goal for grade 10, and then back to reflecting on our stories with grade 11, and then dream discussions for grade 12, reflect on our dreams and explore ways they may connect to our sense of purpose. So you can see how that builds on things. Next slide. This is just to give you an example. There were tons I could have chosen, but one of the teachers recommended this one. So this one highlight without saturating with too much information. So one of the activities, more of an icebreaker activity that you could do in an advisory, imagine a group of students, maybe there's a dozen students, 15 students in the class, and the teacher's facilitating and says, so projects this on an interactive panel and says, choose one of the 7 categories. And they all have different activities attached to it. So they're not always, some of the kids have favorite categories. They use it again and again, but they can, pop around. So it's very interactive. So they'll choose one of these things, they'll click on it. And so they'll go to the next slide, please. Next, they'll choose a number because they chose media, right? So they'll choose a number and that will lead to something else. So they kind of have to pay attention, So next slide, please. And so it's a discussion topic, what's your favorite music group or artist or podcast and why? And then if they really get into it after they've done a round of this, and they can pass on it if they can't come up with something, but often the kids, it leads to good conversations and discussions, and kids are getting to know each other even better. I didn't know that about you. Well, that's really cool. I never heard of them. I don't think I'll go give that a listen. So it can lead to those natural sort of bonding connections that we all sort of thrive on as as kids, but as adults. Again, fostering good conversations, connections, character, and belonging. So next steps, we get the next slide. 5 sessions left. We'll reflect and gather feedback at the end of the year, or near the end of the year in spring. We, thanks to Kelly and Beth, they've just recently approved and we've purchased on-demand professional development for the staff, so they can do a self-paced thing. Is it good through 2025?
Yes.
So they'll be able, a lot of teachers don't have time right now, but they might take it. Many of them said they take a peek at it over the summer and kind of explore more about it as they prep for next year. Sample topics, including multi-tiered systems of support, trauma informed practices. There's all kinds of other things aside from just Character Strong that this particular advisory curriculum that Character Strong offers. So there's the reference information here. If you want to take a look at, you can, I know you have it in your packet. If you wanted to click on and check out the site, and you can really explore it. And I just want to conclude by just thanking the SEL team that worked so hard over the summer to, help select this curriculum and launch it this year. Happy to answer any questions. There's the dazzling visual again, just to kind of close out on why we're doing this. That's a nice reminder.
Great presentation. Questions, comments?
I have a few questions.
Sure.
Sorry.
Take it away.
This is great. I love the curriculum and I think it seems like a really great program that you guys have adopted. The one thing that I did notice between the middle school and the high school is how the cohorts were kind of put together and the number of times the students are getting together. It seems like the middle school has a little bit more like customized groups. So like you said, you do it, you guys do it alphabetically.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
We might want to look at that, and say maybe we'll do something different. That's just the way advisories have pretty much always been done.
Right.
But what's different this year is they are grouped like grade level, so they're all the ninth graders together, all 10th graders together, like alphabetized, and they stay together as a group, get to know each other for the 4 years with room for adjustments. It's not unusual, especially with what can change, what could happen more often as the advisor changes for one reason or another. They need it's a request by a teacher we need them a teacher to do something else during that time block. On a given year, so that they'll give up their advisory. Teacher leaves. That's certainly what happened this past year. The student wasn't connecting as well, and we needed to do something different. So yeah, that's what we do currently right now.
Yeah, it's just they're interesting approaches.
Yeah,
to
and
it.
once a week with advisory.
You guys do.
And
once a
but
week.
this Character Strong thing is not every advisory Monday. So advisory is this formal curriculum where we're doing this presentation is not every week. It's only 15 sessions, so
Right.
you might just be hanging out in your advisory on a Monday, making small talk with your friends and your advisory teacher about whatever happened that weekend or what's up for the week. So we wanted to make sure we allowed for that in formality as well. This structured approach can be done. What our advisory is about 45 minutes, but a lot of the advisories are done with it in 30 minutes. They still have downtime.
Okay.
And their students have plenty of flex time. So just so you know, they have a 45-minute time period, basically from 9:10 to 9:45 or so, 46. And where they can do all kinds of things and get extra help. This is the advisory that's always on the start of the week.
And they're with the same group all 4 years.
Mhm.
Is that right? So I love the fact that the students are getting that interaction with the same cohort and the same staff member.
Yeah.
But has there been any discussion with mixing them up throughout the years so that they're connecting with more of their peers? Because I would love them to have more of a connection with their peers. It's great to have a connection with the staff member, but to be able to be in different groups every
With
year.
a different
broaden.
set of kids. They change it up. They mix
Yeah,
up.
I just don't know if there's been
I
any
think that's a
discussion
good
about
suggestion for us to look at. And see what we might do differently if we wanted to mix it up, and
that. How big are the groups?
it varies. So they can be, it depends, it can be, you can have an advisory with 10 kids and you can have an advisory with, in the upper teens. We try to keep them as small as possible, but
Yeah.
I'd have to look at where it caps out. I have the numbers on my computer.
Yeah.
I'll have to see what the largest one is and the smallest one.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see, they could have so many more touch points with so many more of their peers, especially as the district grows, you have those really big schools, and like I was in a class of 500 and I only knew
Yeah,
20 kids, we're obviously not there.
Yeah,
It's
it does.
an opportunity.
Sure.
Yeah.
It does change a little bit though at the high school level where you're not in I know you know this, but you're not in the same class, self-contained classroom like you are at Russell Street. Our kids are switching classes, changing levels. participating in different activities. The flex block, Tuesday through Friday, allows a lot of opportunity for kids to have experience with diverse peers or, different affinity groups and different connections, or just be with their friends. Because some kid may all have only one friend in advisory. If they have an advisory session and they've completed the character strong session, they can get a pass and go to someplace else from the teacher. So they're not captive, but for this activity, they are. But our kids will often sign out, even, so say it's an informal advisory, there's no character strong session. They'll sign out and go see a teacher. They can do that.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more flexible than
Yeah.
you might have initially come across.
Yeah, it seems like it's so flexible, you can really customize it, so I
Yeah,
think that's
They
great.
do have plenty of connections with
Yeah.
lots of kids aside from their advisory. In fact, they might ask for us to not be with them. They'll go leave because they want to go hang out with someone else.
Thank you.
Okay.
No, I really appreciate social emotional curriculum beyond early childhood. So
Yeah.
we need social emotional curriculum as adults oftentimes. So
Yes.
and really appreciate sort of the examples I think it really brought to life with this is you're doing this for the first year. What was the thing you said you started in 2014? Is that advisory?
We started our review. We discussed
Oh,
SEL became part of it. It was definitely, we were discussing it as part of strategic planning
Okay.
for 2020. And we were talking about, really digging deeper into what we would offer. And it was discussed about all buildings. There were selections made for the younger grades, the elementary schools, but the high school, we just couldn't find something adequate enough to feel like we could implement it.
okay.
Then, what happened right before we were digging into it again, right, in 2020, something happened, we
Yeah.
postponed it, and here it is.
Okay. Okay, great. I got a little bit lost there.
Yeah,
Yes, that makes sense.
the discussions around doing something at the high school level had started that
That makes
long ago, 10 years ago.
Okay.
And so, yeah, and then, just postponed.
Yeah, great.
I think it's absolutely wonderful. I love the formalized approach, right? It's like, there's lesson plans. Is it basically every other Monday? Is that kind of how the schedule works?
It's not quite that. We reserve the flexibility to say, oh, it's not gonna work on this Monday, we have to do it as a Tuesday. But I would say it's not quite every other, because of holidays and whatnot.
Sure. But
But
it's,
it's quite, there'll be some months where we do it twice a month
yeah,
on a Monday, and some months where it's just once on a Monday.
sure.
And then we have to sometimes make up a session
Yeah.
because this can happen. Something else is a priority is so important, we're gonna have to postpone the character strong.
So you've got enough, because it all sounds wonderful. And these are like, I refer to these kind of like soft skills, like building soft skills.
Yeah.
Which is hugely important in real life. What's the like, you've got enough reps at it. What's the attitude of the students? Like, oh, we got the character strong thing today. Like,
Yeah,
do the staff kind of dread it because they got to,
I
ask the
think
difficult
Jason
questions?
spoke a little bit to this too. There's different
Yeah.
teachers have different styles, maybe they had to warm up to it a little bit. We made it as easy as possible to implement, so it
Mhm.
wasn't like they were busy Sunday night or Monday morning trying to, what do I do with advisory or with the character strong? So they already know it's already,
So far,
It's already
going pretty well.
it's pre-planned. My feeling anecdotally is that it's going well, but I think we really need to collect some data, have some more focus groups with kids, like I've just been asking sort of nonchalantly about it, but I think this is a good suggestion. I think, Harry, this question for you is to go and get the pulse of it and say, I'd like to go to the advisories and talk to the kids directly and say, yay, how's this going for you? And get real live feedback. Because sometimes, the survey is one thing, but you can see their reaction to it when I bring up the question. How's this going? What do you think of it?
Yeah. I
And
mean, it's still early. I just, I think it's really,
Yeah.
I think it's super important. And if we could make sure that we do this in a fashion where
yeah,
it's impactful, like I fully support it.
yeah, we want to be responsive though to feedback too and make any adjustments we need along the way. So we have a faculty meeting next Wednesday. I'll put it on the agenda to say, hey, how's this going? There are some teachers that if we cancel character strong, you can relate this, haven't been in schools for a while. If you said, we're not going to do this anymore, effective immediately, never mind that, but effective in March. They wouldn't care.
Sure.
It'd be fine. I'll just be fine with my kids and my advisory. I'll just continue to do what I always did in my advisory. There's other teachers who'll be really sad and disappointed. I'll tell you that for sure. I talked to our school leadership team today at an after school meeting. Many of them love their advisory and the activities, and they're building stronger connections with the kids as a result of this curriculum.
We'll be administering an end of year survey and we'll be conducting focus groups with staff and students. to evaluate.
Yeah, I had a similar question about the impact that you're seeing so far, but it is early days and,
Yeah.
you know, you shared a couple anecdotes of, but it would be great to hear from you again at the end of the year, once you get the survey results back.
Yeah, sure.
See how things
Happy
are
to.
going. But I also had another question, this activity you shared was, reminds me so much of those old fortune tellers. I was like, do you remember those? Yeah.
This leads to this and this leads to that.
Yeah, like you flip up the flap and then you do
Yeah.
this and. you
Just
do
the
this.
digital
It's
version.
like the digital version of it.
Yeah.
Are you seeing any overlap with this with your DEIB initiatives?
Yeah.
I am seeing a lot of crossover, so I was
Certainly
wondering.
with the strong sense of belonging, some of the
Yeah.
activities. I think we'd have to explicitly, to give you the best answer possible, we'd have to really do an explicit look at that and say, where is the crossover? You know how they do those cross-curricular maps of tables and just say, where is their crossover and synergy and things like that? There certainly isn't here, especially with the strong emphasis on belonging.
Right, that's what made
connections.
me think of it.
Yeah, I think that stands out, and that's why we want to mention that too. And it certainly, it was the priority for the ninth grade year, right? Like one of the first or second slide. So I would say, yes, for certain, with the strong focus on belonging in ninth grade.
And some of it may come from the students too. They may start to make the connections when in the conversations that are generated through this
Yeah,
program.
with
So,
perspective taking piece too.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure.
well, this is very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
It's working, Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Clap for my financial presentation.
Well, next time, Steve.
Wouldn't be doing this program without you.
All right, next up, we've got the draft 2024-2025 calendar. Director of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Steele. Present the 2024-2025 calendar. There's also a potential motion listed. So we'll hear the presentation. We'll have some discussion.
So I can start off to tee Beth off, so to speak. We use a process every year when we develop our calendar. We started a little over a month ago. Certainly discussions with various stakeholders, including the school committee. We obviously take some cues from you in terms of how we create our calendar, discussions from last year, for example. And then we try to be as consistent as we can. And when we make a calendar, we're really focused on optimizing student learning, teacher professional development, and also taking into account the needs of our families. We understand half days are hard for some people. The earlier we get our calendar out, we feel that they have the time necessary to make those arrangements, and our after school programs, et cetera, helps as well. And with our partnership with Park and Rec, that sets some added bonus to coverage for those half days. So it is a nice realization that with our change in the beginning of the school year, we're getting out probably the earliest time I ever remember for many years. And, it's going to be nice to actualize that, providing we don't have some weather coming through that we're unaware of. So I'm not going to be too optimistic, but just optimistic. So we did change the design of the calendar. We wanted to make it easier to read. I'm hoping that we accomplished what we set out to do. And speaking of calendars, Julie Lord, one of our technology leaders, has created a slide procedure, so to speak, and we'll figure out how we're going to distribute that to parents so that you can access our calendar and download it to your personal calendars. We're excited about that as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Steele.
All right. So the funder is a little bit stolen.
I'm sorry.
I knew that was gonna happen.
But Obviously, when we look at it, you see a clear difference from this calendar and previous ones. A huge shout out and appreciation to Karen Solomonides, my administrative assistant, and Dorothy Malone, for really working and collaborating of trying to figure out aesthetically a way for it to just be a little bit easier to read and with notes that are right there next to the month. And so we're hopeful. So far, feedback has been positive that the ease of reading it has been better. So we're hopeful that you have the same feedback as well. When we look at the actual content, right, there's the looking of the calendar, but then there's the meat behind it that's more important, right? When we build the calendar, as Dr. Punchy indicated, really the center of this is our students, right? Or the question that we always go back to is what is best for students? And so what we are proposing here is, with our experience, what is best for students. And so we review the previous year's calendar and we reflect. A lot of times we start with just mirroring last year's calendar and reflect on what went well with that calendar, what didn't go as well, what feedback did we receive. So for example, in the calendar that you were previewing this evening, we're adjusting our early release days to not be the week before a vacation, to allow for a consistent school week leading into a vacation that can at times be inconsistent for our students. And so trying to build that consistency in there for our students, for our staff, and for our families. That's something that we reflected on this year when we did have an early release day the week before vacation. Speaking of consistency, we know that consistency for our students and routines and structures is incredibly beneficial. Jason mentioned it tonight with the advisory, like the predictableness of that is helpful for students to be able to come, to show up, to know what's expected of them, right? So that consistency there. We also heard last year when it was shared around this metaphorical table in this space, right? That having a consistent calendar for families was very important. And so in order to maintain this consistency, we made the really thoughtful decision to ensure that all of our purposeful interrupted days, meaning our conference days, our early release days, are consistently scheduled on Wednesdays. This allows for consistency for the students, for the staffs, as well as for the families, especially those that need childcare. You know, Wednesday's your day, you have to get childcare. So we were thinking of that. The one exception to this, when you're looking at the calendar, is that May date. May 23rd is a Friday. We are proposing it as an early release day. Our admin team has reviewed this, especially with the idea of what I just said, of keeping that consistency on our early release days for Wednesdays, and in with consultation with the LEA, and they provided that feedback of really the consistency on Wednesdays and having that be meaningful for them, for their professional development, but also for our students to be consistent on those Wednesdays. Unfortunately, after having this conversation, looking and at our admin team, we threw out several dates. It just ends up being a little tricky in May due to MCAS. There's some strict MCAS schedules and then other testing windows. And so for now, it's not impossible, but for now we are leaving it as the 23rd. The other reason that makes it a little tricky is that we are trying to be conscious and just considerate of making sure that we spread those days out so that it's not too much. We've had this conversation before where it starts to feel like there's a lot of months or a month or two that feels really interrupted. And so trying to just be aware of spacing out those professional development days. And so this is why you'll see on this calendar, the 10 early release professional development days that are spread out throughout the calendar. You'll also see the starting a week before Labor Day Monday. So starting August 26th for staff and having students come in on the 27th, and then having pre-K start the following Tuesday on September 3rd. That all, it gets very quickly followed up by our back to school nights because we feel it's important to have that pretty close to the beginning of the year. So there's names to faces, you can see spaces. I think we all feel a little bit better when we can imagine where our children are going every day. The religious holidays, Yom Kippur, you will note, it actually begins October 11th at sundown, and is celebrated, through the 12th, which is a Saturday. So it does not impact a day of school this year. However, Diwali is on a school day this year, for next year, November 1st, is marked as Diwali. So with all of that information, I think hopefully it comes across that we're thoughtful when we have these conversations, and there are many conversations that go into it. And so I would just like to thank our admin team who, at the drop of a dime yesterday, jumped on a Google Meet with me to have some conversations, with our union representatives that we meet with and consult. And so there's a lot of brain power and conversations that go into it. So I appreciate all of the effort that has brought us to this point here.
Feedback from the school committee members, questions, comments? You want to start?
So it seems like you have a good way to hear from the teachers through the LEA. Is there a way to hear from families about what their preferences are for distributing the half days?
So we hear from here, right? This is a platform. We don't have a formalized survey or anything of that. When people want to provide feedback, they do, right? And so we do hear, when someone does want to provide that feedback, we do hear that. There is not a formalized way specific to calendar building at this point in time.
Yeah, the tricky thing with that is that the people who are angry are typically the ones who reach out, and the people that are just fine with it the way that it is are not the ones that reach out. So it gives you kind of a skewed perception of what families think.
And our school committee members are really good about, letting us know what they're hearing in the community as well. And that's helpful too.
Yeah.
And, and I agree with what you're saying. What we're really trying to do is we put ourselves in parents' shoes and try to make sure we're as thoughtful as we can when we develop our calendar, but our students are our focus. And PD is really important to help our teachers grow as well. So we're trying to get the best of both worlds, and we I think do as good as we can, and we just want to make sure that when we're offering professional development, it's an optimal time for teacher learning as well. And at times we're bringing in presenters. We have to make sure that we offer it during a time of the week where we're going to get quality presenters that want to present. So it's a puzzle that we put together. I can tell you through some research that we've all been doing with MTSS, the recommended number of professional development hours for teachers is around 49. We're short of that. But again, it's the quality of PD as well, but I just want to reinforce to everybody is that PD is really important. Education is not stagnant; it's changing all the time. We want to make sure that our teachers have the tools that they need to teach a robust curriculum, critical thinking skills, and making sure that they're adjusting to the changing demographics within our community as well.
Right? I have
Sure.
some things to say about the calendar. Can I just ask you a question about the 49 hours?
Yeah.
So what was that stat?
The average recommendation when we took a look at MTSS, we had a review done. Citations of articles recommended about 49 hours of PD for teachers.
And it looks like we have 10 times 3
It's 30 plus 6.
plus 6, 36.
Yeah. Plus, we count the first day now for 4 hours. Probably not 4 hours,
So 40.
40.
And then there's obviously a lot of opportunity for self-led PD through additional coursework that can be done that the district would reimburse for and all that. That
Right.
would all count, right?
When we teased it out, they were referring more to structured PD, but personally, my belief is that all of that matters.
Sure.
We provide funding and opportunities for our staff. It results in the same thing.
Yeah.
So.
So on the positive, it's all positive. The calendar's so much better. I was looking at it as compared to last year, like the new formats, super easy to read. I think also I had reviewed so many other districts' calendars that this style, it seems to be one adopted by many other districts, so it didn't take me but a second to realize what was going on with all these different days, so job well done there. November always seems to be one of the months that we talk about as a school committee because it's just so busy and a lot of those things are completely unavoidable, right? So we've got 2 federal holidays in that month. Obviously, we choose, as well as every other district chooses, to take the 28th and 29th off. We choose to celebrate Diwali, which is in policy, so that's fine. So I guess it leaves me with the 20th. Like, is there anything that could be done for the parent-teacher conference day? And again, that's a new idea as of this school year. So when we place the parent-teacher conference on November 20th, what we've gone ahead and done is we've impacted every single week in November, which is a challenge. You know, quite honestly, it's a challenge for families. Anytime there's an interruption, it presents an issue, especially the K-5 families. Like, what am I going to do? So I was wondering if there was discussion about moving parent-teacher conference. I know it's early, but like as early as November 4th or November 12th, because if those weeks are already impacted, let's maybe just impact them a little bit more, and then let's have a nice clean 5-day stretch going into yet again another interruption, which is Thanksgiving, which I think everybody looks forward to, so it's not that big of a deal. So that would be, I suppose, one suggestion I would have is maybe moving the parent-teacher conference date in November to a week that's already impacted.
We all look forward to Thanksgiving unless you're hosting a very large Thanksgiving, and then sometimes it's a little stressful, not speaking from experience. We have talked about that, so we talk about moving the days a lot, and so the 20th is one day that we have discussed. There's a couple different things to consider. One is that if you're moving it to the 4th or the 12th, you're looking at quite a break from school for students, right? Because they have the first off for Diwali, a weekend, they'd have the Monday off, they'd have election day off, right? And then coming back, that's a long stretch without, and then potentially that following weekend being the same, right?
Yeah, it becomes a November vacation, right?
Followed by a Thanksgiving
Yeah.
break too, right? So when we, that can be tricky because once you get out of routine and you get out of routine for just long enough, which sometimes can be 3 days, it's hard to bring it back, right? And so, especially with our young ones, that's still kind of the beginning of the year. And so you're just getting underway with the routines and making really great strides there and then taking that break. So that could be tricky. The other, a couple of other pieces to just consider on this is that if we make those moves, then what does attendance rate look like for conference days? And that's attendance rate all around, right? For everyone, for families, for staff, for everyone. Something to consider as well, because if you have someone out, or if you have a family who can't make it for whatever reason, right, then you're looking at, are we looking at accommodating an incredibly larger amount of requests, in which case it's going to take longer to just make sure you meet with everyone, right? And that's an added load on the teacher to make sure that they meet with everyone. It's an added thing for parents or guardians to put on their to-do list. So something to keep in mind there. The other piece I will say is that when we do pick our conference days, we look at our terms and our report cards and our progress reports. And so looking at our trimester schedule, kind of there's a little bit of flexibility living in this area is where we want to be for our conference days. It's before first trimester report cards go out. And so you can have conversations with parents about this is how trimester 1 is going and whatnot. For our quarter system, which is our high school, right? So they're on quarters. For this calendar year, we would actually be looking at report cards coming out on the 12th. And the idea behind conferences is to ensure that there is an available time for a family member or a guardian to come and meet with the educator to have a conversation about how is it going, right? And we find it valuable to not just make assumptions of, I think I'm gonna wanna go talk to this teacher because I've heard this rumbling at home, right? And be able for parents and guardians to look at the report card and say, oh, I actually wanna go see this teacher instead, and thoughtfully plan out the conference as opposed to making assumptions on that. So that would just be another consideration of if we move the 20th to be earlier, the high school report cards aren't previewed before conferences.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that, but when I hear that, I think, well, then it's too late, you know, a quarter of the year's over. You received the report card, you're like, geez, I didn't know this was going on, and now you've got your conference. I mean, on the 12th is the day they come out. It's only a couple days earlier. I mean, I'd rather have the conference in October to learn about an issue that's taking place in my child's classroom where I could maybe try to make a positive impact before those grades are finalized. So I get what you're saying, but I think it's the point's kind of moot.
Can I add
Yeah.
one thing? That progress reports do come out earlier. And so there is that point of contact. And we always say, and I think everyone would say that if we would rather have over communication than under communication. And so if you get the progress report, you have a concern, reach right out right away.
Yeah.
Right. So we would say, don't even wait for conference day, whether it's on the 12th, the 20th, or whatever day.
I hear what you're saying on the 4th. It's a long time out of school to move it to the 4th. Personally, I like the 12th versus the 20th just because it gives you 3 days on the balance of the week and then a fresh 5, and then you've got kind of 2 days going into it. When you talked about consistency and the starting and the stopping, that's always been the problem with November. And I personally feel that like a nice stretch leading into Thanksgiving is going to allow for, you know, a better classroom environment, more momentum going into that versus every week having an impact. That just I might be alone on that. But I feel like if it was only up to me, I would look to try to clean that week up. And then my other suggestion is, just because calendar seems to always be a hot button with me, is I would like to see us move a couple of Wednesdays. I get that having them on every Wednesday provides consistency. But if it's an issue, it's a consistent issue for those same families, right? There are 3 holidays that take place. So we've got Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day on the 14th. We've got Veterans Day on the 11th, and then we've got President's Day on the 20th. So if we could take 3 half-day Wednesdays and move them to the Friday before those days, from a family standpoint and from a learning environment standpoint, you get 4.5 clean days of school, and then you've got the half-day Friday, obviously, and you're going into a long weekend. And I'm not suggesting that everyone goes out of town and, you know, Littleton's going to be deserted, like Market Basket's going to be empty, because everyone is now enjoying 3.5 days off of school. But what I do want to share with you is that there are a lot of dual income households in Littleton now. So we've got working parents, and some of those folks still have office jobs, post-COVID, but a lot of those office jobs have become a lot more flexible. And if you only have to go into the office a couple days a week, typically those are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you drive into Boston on Monday, you drive into Boston on Friday, traffic's much lighter. So if you have to arrange for, childcare and interruption, it's a lot easier to deal with that situation on a Friday, especially going into a long weekend, because to be honest with you, like, work requirements are certainly a lot less on a Friday afternoon going into a long weekend for those that are in the private sector. It's just the way that it works. So my suggestion to the school committee is to take a look at moving 3 Wednesdays to Friday. So we'd end up with 4 professional development days on a Friday, and we'd end up with 6 professional development days on a Wednesday. And then we could reevaluate the following year to say, how did the professional development go? What was the attendance like? Did we hear anything positively or negatively from the community? We've done a lot of changes for the most part with the start time and when the school year starts. for the most part, it's been positive. I haven't really heard too much backlash. I'd kind of like to try to keep the momentum going with making some tweaks to the calendar and see how it goes.
May I just provide some, just so that you have a fully informed
Sure.
decision on that? So you said work requirements on a Friday are maybe lesser for those in the private sector. They're not lesser by any means for educators that are gonna be working. They're in the buildings Monday to Friday and Friday afternoon. If our students are leaving and it's a PD day, our educators are still working really hard. And
No,
so just to, I just want to add that in.
Beth, I didn't, that wasn't the point I was trying to make. I get that the work day for those educators is the same no matter which day we place it on. They've got the kids, they're working hard. They've got the PD, they're working hard. What I'm trying to address is the kids coming off the bus at noon, and what do we do? And we've got 3 federal holidays that are taking place on Monday. I know folks are working from home on Fridays. I know that they're not working from home on Wednesdays. And it's like you said, consistency, trying to find childcare. I know that solves the problem for a lot of folks.
Yeah, and I hear that.
Mhm.
The impact of that switch from Wednesdays to Fridays for on our side is that at the elementary, and when we talk about service providers, their schedules we are set. So then when you have 2 early release days, you have to plan ahead, and if their schedules change, like a provider service changes, you just have to adapt for that, which then could impact prep time for educators. So something just to consider. The other piece there, and Dr. Clenchey mentioned it, is that the provider's availability of professional development can be iffy, especially if it's tied to long weekends. At times, they're able to create their own schedules, and they're going to create them how they want, and can be trickier to get them on those days. And I know that because I have asked with regards to that, because we did try a couple of professional development days on Fridays last year. So when you say the attendance and gathering the data, we have that data. And we do know that the attendance, particularly when it's tied to a long weekend, right? So we're kind of allowing for an opportunity to extend, which no one, not many, I guess I should say, are going to say no to that opportunity, right? It's harder to say no to that opportunity, are going to, and our data shows that our attendance rates are not, we're not as highly attended on those early release Fridays, as we are students.
Yeah.
So just something to consider, and I think when we talk about attendance, and sometimes we say, oh, it's a day here and a day there. We know at the state level, there's a lot of talk around chronic absenteeism, and there's a big push right now for chronic absenteeism, and there's a reason for that. And thankfully, we are not in as rough a position as other districts in the state, but we are having conversations about absenteeism and chronic absenteeism. And so we are not excluded from that by any means. So I just wanted to put a couple of points of consideration.
Sure.
I have a question.
Sure.
I haven't brought up with anybody, so it'll make Justin seem like really easy, because I'm really gonna shake things up here. So my question is, so anecdotally, I understand that a lot of parents are taking, especially since COVID, families are going on vacation, kind of regardless of the school vacation schedule, because it's really expensive, they're trying to avoid crowds, et cetera, so especially during February vacation. How much do we break the school system if we use March as a vacation month as opposed to February? So we're kind of keeping the kids in school during that time where everybody else is on vacation, and using March, which is fairly consistent when it comes to the schedule. And it's also kind of right before MCAS. I don't think MCAS start until the end of March. Is there any way to change? It's MCAS is March into April, right?
No, but you're
March
saying break March
through-
and then April, is it?
No, I'm saying, so do, instead of February vacation, middle of February, do it beginning of March. You weren't kidding about shaking things. So, I thought you were gonna go into.
That's what I got.
Yeah.
And then another week in April as well?
What's that?
And then
April.
another week in
Well, we have,
April.
I mean, I mean, the kids are gonna be in MCAS all through, kids are in MCAS the last 2 weeks of March into April, right? And then they have another week of school and yeah, give them another break. I don't know, I was just,
I love the
Is there
creative,
any
like, the
data?
creative ideas. I think these are like types of things like, let's have the conversation, right?
yeah.
And I feel like I'm negative Nancy. So, the MCAS, you brought it up, it's tricky, right? Because you start to get into that. The one thing I will say, and I just had this conversation with an educator at the high school when I was there today, we were talking about how February break is coming. And we were kind of appreciative of it because we are noticing that illnesses are kind of being passed around and people are sniffling and there's a lot of kind of different things seem to be brewing. And so we were commenting on how February break is coming and it always comes at the right time to kind of clear out the building and get everyone kind of away, to clear up anything of that sort to then come back in March. Yes, March is a long month. You ask any educator and March lasts 3 years.
Yeah.
But it's bookended, right, in February by having that like winter germ cleaning break and then having a break.
And this may seem really strange to those of you that haven't been in education in the classroom. But by the time that February break rolls around, and it's very difficult to explain, but teachers are ready for a break. And it's kind of interesting because we have the break in December. So logically you would think, well, it'll be good till March or whatever, but that's really not the case. And I can tell you I've probably had a February vacation for 80% of my career as a teacher, school administrator, and superintendent. And I don't think that pattern has changed ever since I started to teach, which is really kind of intriguing to me. So there is a tiredness that evolves during that week. So it's, for me, I guess as the educational leader, I'd like our staff to be rejuvenated and ready to go and give it 100%, for the rest of the months prior to the end of the year as well. So,
I remember when I was
My eyes are not, their bags under the eyes are looking good. Thank you. The other piece, John had kind of whispered it too. And sorry, I did not mean to cut you off, Elaine. The kind of get February break, it's a 5 for 4 deal. Because there's a federal holiday on Monday. And so, if we were to switch to March, we'd have to take 5 full, which adds another day to the end. So just something else to.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Oh, sorry, okay.
But it also, I remember when I was a teacher saying they invented February vacation to get these kids away from each other and to get healthy. Because
And the other
And they
thing
would
too
go
is
back
like,
healthy.
I think it helps the staff to be consistent across the Massachusetts school system because we have teachers that aren't Littleton residents, so their kids are in other districts and they would have a week off where their kids wouldn't have a week off, and then we've got 2 problems versus.
Like I said, might break the system.
Listen,
It's just
I love the idea.
One other question that I had, this will be easy for you. So I heard from a few
Not sure.
Paperlane teachers that Global Play Day is the first Wednesday of February. And it is like the only time that our Shaker Lane kids can have fun at school. Not the only, not the, okay, I was
The best day.
It's the best day ever. They love it.
Favorite day.
That's better.
It's their favorite day. In the whole, I mean, they have a few years of Shaker Lane and then they don't get that. I don't think that they get that at they get it at elementary school too.
They do global school play day.
Okay, wonderful. So, I would love to see how we can move that because the kids were just so disappointed this year that it was a half day. And next year, they're gonna get a half day again. So I would love to see where we can move that.
So there's already a plan, because we've heard that feedback, we've had those conversations. And even just today, I was speaking with Michelle Kane and she said, we're moving it, it's gonna be a full day next year. So Global School Play Day, it's the idea behind it, right? They're not necessarily married to the day. It's sometimes cool to say like, oh, everyone's doing it this day. But if it doesn't work for us,
Yeah.
it's not right, then, so it's already in the works that it will be a full day and be adjusted for next year.
Okay, kids will love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, and I didn't mean it was the only
We
fun
don't.
day. It's not a play day. It's a day that they can actually play, enjoy at school. So thank you. That's it for me.
I don't have any like lobs. to
No.
really use, but, just echoing a lot. I love the idea. I did March break for many, many years, and February is the worst month of your life with,
Yeah.
as an
Yeah.
educator, when
Okay, I would
you're
know
going
that, yeah.
all the way to March. Oh my God. So there is definitely, both and. I also just agree with that November is what it is. And I think the only thing we really have control over is November 20th, and it's a little sad that the only full week of school gets cut off that way. And I also appreciate what you're saying, because I think I made the comment about consistency, like the consistency is so helpful. But maybe, the half days are consistent, but I, as a parent, would be open to conference day being any day. Like, I don't think we necessarily have to lump conference day with half days. So, yes, you are right. The 5 days is a long stretch. The flip side of that is also because of that, like I can fly grandparents in for 5 days. I can't fly them in for 3 weekends in a row. Do you know what I mean? And so that's just offering the opposite perspective too. And then even for consistency for kids, it's like come to school, day off, day off, day off, come to school, day off, come to school. That's also very inconsistent. So I absolutely hear you, like the being away for 5 days and then it's almost like you're starting over. And then the school, no school, school, no school, school, no school is also it's disruptive too. So whether it's the 4th, whether it's the 12th, I think I would love that week of November if possible, and just whatever, if it works, if it doesn't work, but just throw it out there if it's possible. That is like the only full week of school in November. Next year, October will be not so fun. I've already looked. Yom Kippur, the Diwali, it's all October. So it's, if you just pick a month, a lot of cheers that Diwali happens to be November 1st. And that's the day after Halloween, and gosh, how perfect. And so maybe that's something to consider too, I think, in future years of like, or actually, no, the November 5th PD day is that cross-district one, right?
Yeah, it's always election day, whatever.
Yeah, okay, I was like, oh, could that be a PD day? But okay, that makes sense. Or could it be a conference day also, I guess, to consider, right? Because that day after Halloween is a struggle for a parent, but I think even as a teacher, gosh, the day after Halloween was rough, but could that be a conference day in the future? Just something to throw out there. And then March too, why did we do them back to back? Is that an MCAS thing?
The early release in the conference day?
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh.
because the 17th starts, the MCAS windows and.
Okay. Okay, so I guess same, like, again, appreciate the effort for consistency, but does it have to be the 12th? Could it be the 14th? I think it just makes childcare easier for a lot of families that work from home, or even like bringing childcare to you. It's just easier to like tack it on to a weekend somehow. I'll like ship my kids off to New York, right? I can't do that on a random Wednesday.
Yeah,
So
that's
just throwing that out there.
a good point. The symmetry of the calendar, like the 12th, the 12th, like I just didn't like it, but your rationale is good, but the 14th, again, it's like, it just seems, it would just be easier. I mean, when we talked about the conferences being a full day off, I was like, oh, that's gonna be great. And then when it happened, I was like, oh my God, I have 3 kids in 3 different schools. How am I possibly gonna do this? And it's actually way easier to do it on a Friday than it is smack dab in the middle of the work week. Like I can say that wholeheartedly. So.
Actually, I wonder if it would help attendance. Like, I didn't go to conferences because I was at work this Wednesday or this past time. I don't know if it would, again, a data point, but would more parents be able to come if it's on a Friday? And you bring up the other point too, like, will parents just take it as an opportunity to leave? Possibly.
We don't know, right? Because it's the first year we've done conferences. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I would love the opportunity to have some conversations about that further, if that's something that we seriously want to consider. So I understand you correctly, the 20th looking to move to like the 12th or the 4th of November.
Or even 8th, right? Now that you bring up that idea.
Or, okay,
Yeah, whatever, any considerations, and you all know sort of what would make sense, but if there's any considerations where we could just have this one full week in November.
and then the March 12th too, you're saying move to
10th, 14th,
Monday or Friday. Okay,
if it's possible.
I mean, is it possible to survey families? I feel like we're making assumptions based on, 3 school committee members with children in the schools, and that's the only.
I did ask, I didn't ask every parent in the community. obviously. A decent amount, informally, obviously, not the start time survey, but there are people, I think there are a lot of fortunate people like myself who can work from home on certain days. We have families who work 5 days a week, like all of this is challenging, right? And then there are after school and all of those things, but I think like Justin said, if you go on Route 2 on a Friday, it's like pretty empty. And so I understand what you're talking about with the half days and the moving that, but I think if we're able to do that for conference days even, I think that's a tremendous help.
So what would you prefer, the 12th or the 8th?
I prefer the 4th. Maybe that's too crazy. 12th is great too.
Well, I think what we've heard is the 4th would be pretty easy and interfere with the process we've used with the high school for many years. Have those report cards out, right? For the marks up.
Is it okay with that part of this?
Because they come out after, the report card would come out after.
Grades will close 31st.
So John, I mean, since you're the
Yeah.
high school principal.
Yep.
What is your feeling on if we did move that conference day to the 12th, 8th, or 4th?
So moving in November.
November,
Yeah, from the 20th to the 12th.
the 4th, 8th, or 12th. Right?
Yep.
That's what it's just, it's got,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
there's one of those dates absolutely not work.
Well, we need, I mean, it's the early release, that's full day teacher conference.
Mhm.
I think it'd be worth getting some teacher feedback on that to see what would be the impact on them in terms of, the grades are closing, we have a little extra window at Littleton High School where, kids who are, there's a little extra week built in, it doesn't exist in some high schools where kids on the down low, but kids,
Anymore.
but kids use that time. Teachers are gracious to give, all right, get this in.
Sure.
The grades are officially closed, but it salvages some kids who are falling behind. It does work for us at our high school. So sometimes teachers the following week are still giving kids, or kids just had absenteeism and they need time so they don't get an incomplete. They complete a quiz or a test. So some teachers are generous and will give kids a couple extra days beyond the grades officially closing. And some, it's hard and fast, it's closed the 31st. So that's just the reality of the high school culture. It has been for 20 plus years. I would say, so that would be going on. That's a shortened period anyway, the 4th and 5th. With Diwali on the 1st, that's a November vacation. I laughed when you said that, because it really is.
For students, not for anyone else.
Yeah, for students.
Yes.
Right.
So the 12th, moving it to the 12th November, on the day after Veterans Day doesn't really, our grades are done, they're published on the 12th. So, on the November. Was they talk moving to the 12th?
Yeah, I think the other piece, is that there's a lot of preparation goes into the conference day too, right? So that's something to consider, that when and how are our staff preparing for those conference days? That's something I think to consider for everyone. And then for the high school, you have staff who are grading actively and preparing for conferences, right? So they're doing both of those things at the same time.
The minimal grading, just for the high school at that point, it's here and there. The 4th, what my concern would be as high school principal, and probably be concerned with faculty. It's a nice November vacation for the kids. However, I think we would have, I wonder how disruptive that.
When, I had chatted about it a
That
little
length
bit
of absence.
with the 4th, right? It's parent teacher conference day. It's the students have the day off, but the parents don't, and
Right.
the teachers don't.
Exactly.
And that's a draining day. I get that. It's like a very exhausting day. And then on the 5th, like this would be a reason to put it on the 4th, because on the 5th, again, they don't have the day off. But it's professional development. You bring in I've seen the pictures. You got a nice breakfast, you know, you're in the auditorium, there's like
It's not a spa day though. Our teachers
not
are
a-
doing, our
it's
teachers are
not-
doing work.
it's
We
not a
feed
spa
them.
day,
We
but
definitely eat well. I
You're
would say
in
that.
a, you're in a comfy chair, you're getting re-energized. It's like good things happen on the fit and you don't have 22 kids in front of you again.
It's work and it's collaboration. No, but at times you have 22 adults in front of you, right? So some of our staff are actually facilitating PD on those days, and so they're themselves actually teaching too. So it's a different day. And I will say, we heard feedback, and yes, conference day is draining, and PD day is draining, but feedback that we have received from our educators is that being able to have their mind focus on one thing for the day is helpful, right? So as opposed to having to teach and then to have to kind of switch and go into, you know, conference mode, or to switch and go into PD mode, it makes it a little bit more exhausting than what it is, right? So we have received positive feedback in that way. It's just
So
Yeah.
let's
Beth,
look
what
at
about
this.
the 15th? The 15th?
You read my mind.
Yeah, the
15th of the 8th, I mean, you're gonna get the same thing. But Friday, I mean, 15th, this one was the first one I picked, and then I looked at the 8th.
Yeah.
I think it's certainly, I think we hear the like desire, right? I would love to be able to then have more, like, me go back to admin, to our
Sure.
educators, have those conversations. You also go out and have conversations, you know, get that feedback from families, and see if we can come to a consensus. I think it's clear what your desire is, and so I feel confident being able to like turn and have those conversations.
Yeah.
So before we do that, I think we still need to finish our discussion on March 12th.
to the 14th.
And if it's any
I mean-
sort of gusto, if it's helpful for teachers even to like have conferences and go into a weekend. More reason to do on a Friday. It's an exhausting day.
I will build in the.
Add that to the pros. I don't know if it's anybody else's pros, but I would think so. It's an
Yeah.
exhausting day.
Or do both, so like move November to a Friday, get the data, so move it to the 15th, and then leave the March one where it is, and then we had a school year where we had. Parent-teacher conferences on a Friday and parent-teacher conferences on a Wednesday, and we'd be able to reflect upon how did that feel, how did that go?
It's a good idea. So I think what we're hearing is, let's go back and think about it, and in the next meeting, we'll put the calendar on, and my wish, if possible, would be to get a calendar out, because Dorothy's phone is gonna start ringing off the hook pretty soon here, because we have a lot of parents that love to plan, which is great. So I find when we hit the end of February, if we don't have a calendar out, we're fielding a lot of calls in terms of when is the calendar coming up. So,
Right.
great discussion tonight. I mean, we really need to continue to have these discussions, and the key is to take care of all parties as much as we can. I mean, everybody's important in this process, so I really value the discussion that we have tonight.
So in summary, we're gonna report back at our next meeting. It's clear that we're gonna discuss any possible dates for the parent-teacher conferences. Was there any traction on moving 3 Wednesday PDs to Fridays? Was there any like support from the school committee on that, or are we good with how these are as presented on the regular half-day Wednesdays?
I think before we start making shifts from Wednesdays to Fridays, we would really need to hear from the community, like,
How are you suggesting we do that?
well, I think a survey is the most equitable way to do it, instead of, people who know people. That's just not you don't capture everybody.
Mike? Hearing from the community isn't a bad thing. My concern is we're gonna get, someone's like, I don't work Tuesdays, they should be on Tuesdays, I don't work, like, we're gonna hear 300 different stories.
Well, I
We're gonna have
don't
distortion.
know, not like that, but just to send out a survey where you're checking off boxes, not the anecdotal stuff, that'll blow it up, but just, you know, like a Google form so that you get some nice bar graphs.
Limited to Wednesday or Friday.
Yeah, and, yeah,
Limit the choice.
right, and then, right, and then if you get enough responses, you see a trend. And that's real data. That's not reliant on somebody knowing somebody and passing on your thoughts.
I'd be interested in seeing that. Is that something that the district's interested in doing?
We could, I mean, the only thing I'm thinking about is we certainly wouldn't want to see all half PD days on Fridays. That would, for professional development in terms of our staff, I feel pretty strongly that would be tipping the balance too far. So how do we tease that out of the survey? If we need to be specific, we're thinking of moving 3 Wednesday half-day PD days to Friday. What would your choice be? Leave them on Wednesday or choose Friday? So I want to make sure we're not opening this up more than we're prepared to do. Last thing I want to do is send something to the public and give them a false impression in terms of what they're going to do as per. So we can certainly go ahead.
I was just gonna ask a clarifying question. On the Wednesday PD day, is the like release time, the end time, the same as the release time for school? Are they longer days?
For the staff?
Yeah.
It's the same.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I was saying like if it's a PD day, are they there longer? Cause like PD is like 3 hours or it's the same as,
No, it follows the school day, so in their school.
okay. And then you had mentioned one of the challenges with Fridays is getting speakers. Could it then be for, I think there's a couple that are like internal staff. Could it be just for like those few perhaps as like an in-between
The school.
where there's not speakers? And then the rest of them still being on Wednesday? That was going out suggestion.
Yeah, I think if we're gonna do a family survey, fair to also do an educator survey, right?
Sure.
Get feedback from, if we're gonna do one, I think we have to do the
Right,
other,
because
give
both
everyone their
parties
voice.
are both impacted and their voices are important.
Right, and so maybe that's something we can incorporate into that. I think the other piece, just to add it for the sake of it being added, because I said there was data, I want to actually give you a very small amount of data. On early release days, when it is a Wednesday, on average, we have 109 students absent from district. On early release Fridays, we have 184 students absent from district.
Can we clarify that you're talking about just the Friday before Memorial Day?
No, this is from last year when we had 3 early release Fridays.
What's the absentee rate on full day Fridays versus full day Wednesdays? Like I'm suggesting perhaps that absenteeism is up on Fridays anyways, because it's the end of the week. Yeah. And you might not have it right now, just food for thought. That we
Yeah.
perhaps can't take that data at face value to suggest Fridays won't work. Fridays are on the calendar every week, and we know that it's the end of the week and whatever, mom, dad, brother, sister, there's stuff going on, so it impacts.
Real data we got at high school last year, before real day.
A ton, right? A ton, a ton of that.
You're
And
right.
if that was a full day, you might still have a ton of absenteeism, and now they've missed 6 hours versus missing 3. So, I don't know.
Well, we do, I mean, full day, so you caught me on the one data point. Didn't prepare with that one, but, full day before vacation, the average is 204 absences. So we know it's there, right?
To Stacy's point earlier,
so-
people buying tickets or buying them, they're shopping.
So then, do we even want to encourage that more by adding to that, right?
Can I just clarify, is that on the premise that so Justin, you had said to add a few half days when it was going to be a 3-day weekend, right? When we had holidays on a Monday. Right? So you would say we'd have a half day Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday off.
Yeah,
And
that's where the
we have an
idea
absolute
started.
Problem with that. But what if on some of the weeks, like October 4th, like the 4th week in October, what if we just have 4 full days and then a half day on Friday, and then the next week starts normal? It's not a 4-day weekend. It's not, people are gonna be getting away for that amount of time. But it's still giving the kids 4 full days.
Yeah,
And then ending on a half day Friday. So maybe not play on the holiday
breaks, but play on the full weeks where we have.
That's a good idea too. If we
it's
determine that
not-
that's a real concern,
Mhm.
is that it's gonna lead to absenteeism, we're gonna encourage people to miss school that day, then we could move it to the regular 2-day weekend. What I was my point was stemming from the fact that if you're in a situation where the kids are getting off the bus earlier, it's easier to do it on a Friday than it is to do it smack dab in the middle of the work week.
Mhm.
That's my point.
And I appreciate you clarifying that, and not trying to tag it onto the 3, because that's different. There's 2 different weekends,
yeah.
right? And so I appreciate that clarification.
I do like that idea. And, you know, just to add to the conversation, if we did something like that, I don't think it's necessary to go back out to the public. We did it last year. We didn't receive any negative feedback. Maybe we did. I didn't receive any feedback. So if we're gonna try something, I think that probably would be the better way to go, and we'll look at the data. If we decide to do that for next calendar year and we'll look at the absenteeism. I mean, it's not as if we haven't done 3 Fridays before. So we already have a calendar that we exercised and it went okay in terms of the public. So I don't necessarily think we need to go back out to the public after we've done something. It's been perceived to be successful.
Right, and I remember those conversations, you know,
Right.
like, there's always, it's like, we have a half day this week, and it's like, oh, but it's Friday. That's just so much easier to deal with. So anecdotally, you know, my sample size was successful. And I didn't receive one negative comment, how dare you give us a half day on Friday? So,
Since we're going out for the conference days, is it worth, since we're talking about conference days, can we have a conversation about that as well then? Right?
For the
Because yeah,
Well,
For those-
first of
right.
all,
no votes happened.
we need to decide, are we gonna do a survey, or are we gonna keep this calendar as similar as we can to what we've done in the past 2-3 years? Because it hasn't been the same. 2 years ago, we did 3 Fridays. So the conference days is the first year we've done them. So what do? I mean, we've already said to the LEA that we're gonna come back, this is a pilot, and we're gonna review that before we start negotiating another contract. I think it was a year before we start negotiating another contract, so I'm just trying to get some traction here. Don't mind surveying the public, but there needs to be a purpose. And if you guys want us to survey the public, we will, but you know, I think in those Fridays, it's not necessary. Is the switch of the conference day that much of a change that we should survey the public? I don't know.
I think similar, and people are really busy, over surveyed in life, I think. I'm trying to imagine somebody that was like, please don't do it on a Friday, do it on a Wednesday. And what scenario that would be. No, and
I'm right there with you.
I'm jokingly, but I'm saying it in all seriousness, like,
Are you
why
thinking
there
of
would be a more
conference days or early
compelling,
release days or both?
for conference days.
Okay.
For conference days. What the compelling argument would be from the parent side. I think maybe for educators, maybe it's better to have a survey. Again, like, geez, I'd love to have conferences and then have a weekend instead of going back to school with kids for 2 more days, but maybe that's just me. But like, what would be the compelling reason? You made a compelling reason, which is it's consistent. Wednesday, that's your childcare day, don't think about another day. And I brought that point up, but as a parent on a Friday or a Monday, it's so much easier to have care when it's a full day off. Other than the consistent, what is the argument for Wednesday? I don't know.
So I'm gonna throw something out there just to
Go for it.
move the conversation along, so to speak, but so I would propose that we consider more correctly the conference date for November 15th rather than November 20th. We're gonna backtrack to October, the October half-P day on the 23rd, move it to the 25th. I'm gonna try to create some consistency here. So November, we're not gonna touch, obviously. December, the 11th, move to the 13th. And then January, the 8th would move to the 10th. And then I'm going to go to the second conference day in March and propose that you consider moving that to the 14th.
In the November 20th conference, you moved to the,
15.
15th.
I'm in some,
Is that to put out to LEA and educators and staff, or is that you're proposing?
I think that summarizes all of the changes we were
I'm proposing
discussing.
it here. We have the authority as a school committee to finalize a calendar. We had discussions. We brought you the calendar back that we discussed with the LEA, the admin council, some of the principals. I'm sure discussed it with staff, et cetera. So again, we need to be flexible. We need to do things that are in the best interests of our students and try to meet the needs of all three parties. If you really want to dip your toe in the water, this isn't a huge change. We had 3 Fridays last year.
Right. So
the only change is conference days, which is pretty new anyway. This first year of doing it. So I don't see this as an earth shattering change to the calendar.
Mhm.
Now, Stacy's suggestion was significant. But it was awesome.
So,
I have some.
Just for
So
the record,
much-
Kelly, for those listening, can you repeat those 3 days?
Want me to do that? Sure. All right, I'm gonna reverse it just to, for the sake of doing it. The half PD day on the October 23rd would be moved to October 25th. The November conference day, which is currently on the 20th, would be moved to the Friday, November 15th. The December 13th December 11th PD day would be moved to Friday, December 13th. The January half PD day on the 8th would be moved to January 10th. The March conference day, which is slotted for March 12th, would be moved to March 14th.
So then you're leaving the Wednesday early release days in February and March alone.
Yes.
September,
And September.
February, March, April,
April, yeah.
May. Those are.
Yeah.
I just kind of sequenced them for, my logic into that is, we're gonna have somewhat of an established pattern for the Fridays. So that was my logic.
You're adding one more, just to be clear. That would be 4 early release days on Fridays. As opposed to 3, which is what the conversation has been up until this moment.
Well, it was 3 changes plus the May one, which is already in place. So you would have four total.
Correct. Up until Dr. Country mentioned that it was only 3 days.
Oh,
We're moving.
I misunderstood that. I
October.
thought
I just want to make sure that we're
Moving
rid of that.
October's,
we can
we're
backtrack.
moving December's, and we're moving January's.
And then May is already in
And then May,
Friday.
you already
so
have
have
it.
4.
Correct, that was what the point I was trying to make before. Change 3, we already have 1 for a total of 4. Yeah, so that's consistent with my idea.
Okay, perfect. I think there was
I interpreted
a
that right.
You
You
miscommunication.
said 4 and 6.
4 and
You had
6.
said 4 Friday, 6 Wednesday, and I think last year there was 3 Friday. I
Right.
think that's what.
That's the confusion.
Yeah. So,
Can I add one other piece?
sure,
Is that what is different is that now all of those are attached to 2-day weekends. When last year we went out and piloted this, it was attached to 3-day weekends.
Mhm.
Does it matter? Do we want discussion?
I think we flesh that out with,
I think, yeah,
you know,
we said that.
if absenteeism was a concern because it's a long weekend, let's do this instead. We kind of removes that.
And
You
again,
summarized it correctly. We could motion and potentially vote on that revised calendar, but I don't want to do that in the event that this school calendar committee is going to say, geez, what did the school committee do last night? So if we feel like we need to get some feedback from those proposed changes and then vote on this next meeting, that's fine. If I'm hearing from the administration that you think those changes would not be impactful, then we could take care of this evening. And I'll kind of leave that up to you, Beth and Kelly, to guide us on whether or not you'd prefer a decision tonight, or you'd like us to defer that decision
Well-
until the next meeting.
I mean, in all fairness, we should go back and have this conversation. At least we have something to take back. Which I feel is really important. We have a pattern established. This is what we were considering. Let's get some feedback next meeting, come together and make a decision as to what we're going to do. That sound palatable?
It does. I just, Stacy had a comment.
Yeah,
question.
can I just add, so I think we're consistently inconsistent, because in September, we have Wednesdays off, which I think is great, because you're just trying to get the kids into the groove of the schedule.
Yeah.
Then October, we're going to Friday half days. December, we're Friday half days. January, Friday half days. Then February, we're a Wednesday half day. March, we're a Wednesday.
It's
I'm
not
just-
consistent.
I'm just wondering if we can just do blocks of, like, start the year off on Wednesday half days and end the year off with Friday. If there's some way to finagle that so that we're not kind of flip flopping
I guess-
a little bit.
I guess the way I'm looking at this is when I look at bringing PD in, district PD in, I want to make sure that we have time to reflect and perhaps make some changes during the year. So I think it's important that we front load some of that district PD into the calendar. And then, you know, depending on the goals for next year, I mean, we certainly don't want to have district PD in April or March. We want to make sure that we have enough time after we have the district level PD to have an opportunity to make some changes. I guess from a pragmatic point of view, I think that's really important. So when I did that, I guess I was, maybe I'm wrong. I thought, well, at least the families know for those months we're going to Fridays, and then we're going to go back to Wednesdays. But I'm open to any suggestions that you have.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Stacy, but I think I agree with your point. Like early in the year, the children are building stamina in the classroom. Like to have that middle of the week break, it might be beneficial. And then once we get into those winter months, it's going to kill the after school ski program. But that's not really a concern.
We can
What were
start,
you
we
saying,
can
like,
start in
district-
January doing the
what do you
Fridays,
mean?
and then it would be
Well-
consistent Wednesdays up until January, and then from January to May, it's Fridays. So you have half the year Wednesdays, and then
No,
the
for
last
talk-
part of the year Fridays.
If we're talking about moving through, it would be March and then the 2 in April.
Our,
Yeah, February. We could do
Because we-
January. What's that?
If you just move 1, 2, 3, like the last.
Yeah, just the last 4, then we'd have half the year early release Wednesdays, the other half of the year early release Fridays, and then it's just consistent.
so
It's-
our PD is broken out into school-based and district-based PD. And often when we look at district-based PD, we're looking at common initiatives across all 4 schools. And that's when we bring in expertise. As we implement new curricula, we've adopted a new model where we're providing support for 2, 3 to 4 years, and even on those school-based days at times. But it'll be specific to the school. We would bring a presenter in. But I just want to make sure that when we look at district PD, we're trying to make the biggest impact that we can because it's across all 4 schools. It's a common goal. And in order to be successful at that, we want to make sure that we have time during the year to take a look at what we learned during that PD and start to reflect on practice and alter practice as well.
Yeah, so the district PDs are more when the speakers come, which is
Right.
more of a reason to
Yeah.
keep the beginning of the year Wednesdays. actually,
Right.
Because
Right.
it's hard to get speakers on Fridays, right?
Right.
That's what you had said?
Right.
Yeah, so could flood instead of doing the Fridays in the beginning of the year, do them more towards the end of the year.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we, I think we've kind of said everything we need to say. Why don't we sort of table discussion?
Sure.
What you're hearing from the school committee is we'd like you to consider moving 3 Wednesdays to Fridays.
Mhm.
Come back. If there's a rhyme or reason to the ones that you choose, that would be great. And also moving 2 conference days to Fridays as well.
And March vacation. Got it.
Just out of vacation.
I'll highlight that.
Right.
What I appreciate that we can have a conversation,
So that's awesome.
right? And be able to talk about this in a respectful manner. So,
course.
thank you for your work.
Well, thank you for bringing so much data from the educators in the districts. That
Yeah.
you were very well prepared. I appreciate that.
Okay, now that we get the easy calendar out of the way, we'll tackle the school.
I'm glad
committee
you said it
calendar.
was easy.
So in our packet is the school committee meeting calendar.
Yes.
And
The topic of discussion is always the retreat, August 15th. We usually do one day, but we always book 2 days just in case. And it's important to check those days. 15th to the 16th is the proposed retreat dates.
So I can tell you that in the event that I'm still on the school committee, I would have, because I'm up for reelection, I could make the 15th, I could make the 16th, but if we're sort of trying to do one day anyways, and that 16th is booked as a backup. The 15th works for me for August.
Assuming, making an assumption, we would have one school committee member, new school committee member next year. So I don't personally see the need for 2 days.
Right.
So,
Sure.
but it's up to the rest of the school committee as well.
And then the other days all seem fine to me.
Fine with it. So we're doing 2 days or 1 day?
One day,
It's the 16th.
the 15th.
The 15th, it's a Thursday. Would be the retreat.
Can we do the 16th?
I cannot do the
No,
16th.
okay, so you can't, okay. I
Sure.
And then we start with the regular school committee meetings sort of every other week or twice a month.
And budget hearing always has to be, it's 45 days, isn't it, Steve, prior to the town meeting?
Yeah.
So, scheduled for March 13th. So every March we have a public hearing.
Yep. Any discussion, any comments, questions? I'm gonna take care of that one tonight.
Sure. Welcome a motion to adopt, with the,
Like that.
change to the retreat to a one-day retreat, which would be held on August 15th.
I move that we accept the calendar with the summer retreat on August 15th
It's the only change of presented.
is the only change.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None.
Thank you.
Take care of that. Very good. All right, it's our second opportunity for interested citizens. So if there's anybody here, please come on up. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Excuse me, my name is Kelly Hart. I'm the president of the LEA. And I don't mean to beat a dead horse because I know you guys just spent a lot of time talking about the calendar. But I did want to spend some time talking about the impact to staff. So I was on the negotiating committee with Justin and Stacy and Binal too. I was also on the calendar committee, which recently met with Beth Steele. I was surprised to hear about the switch to, first of all, to conference days. What I found with conferences is that the single day, we went from three half days. We turned 3 half days into 1 full conference day. That was a compromise that we made during negotiations. And quite honestly, in general, I think the staff has found these full conference days to be helpful and to be great. But earlier this year, one thing we did run into a problem with was because there was only 1 day for conferences, if parents had a previous commitment or a vacation that they were taking outside of vacation time, because that happens quite frequently, it made it hard to make up those conference times because there wasn't an opportunity to make them off on a different day. I'm concerned that moving conferences to a Friday or a Monday and having parents have the opportunity to go away or to do something else, that it sends the message that conferences, and especially in-person conferences, which are sort of the most productive, don't mean as much. I feel like that's just sending the wrong message out to the community, that conferences, like, we're just, it's only a 15-minute conference, which is what it's come down to by making it in one day. So now it's just 15 minutes. So as a parent, and my kids went to Littleton Public Schools also, so I've definitely been in the same position. I could just blow off that 15-minute conference and try to schedule it another day, another time, which is, more during my work week or after school or before school. And I think that puts a big burden on educators to manage a lot of other people's expectations. So I was a little disappointed to hear that, because given that it was on a Wednesday this time and parents were still having problems coming, not being able to come on a Friday is probably even more that's going to happen. We hope that parents are going to come in for our conferences in person, because that's where the best conversations happen. And I still offer, and many of us offer, virtual conferences, which I think has made it a lot easier for parents to do a Wednesday afternoon, because they can just take 15 minutes out of their workday and get online. But we really want to see parents, in front of us. The other thing with moving PD to from Wednesdays to Fridays is that, one, as was mentioned, it does make it difficult for service providers to flip from Wednesdays to Fridays. So kids are going to be missing services that are going to have to be made up at some point or switched around or whatever. And the other part is that 2 years ago, when we had 3 Fridays, I think the general opinion was that for educators, it didn't work. So we don't have Friday afternoon PD after teaching for a very long week, right? You want us to come in, and we lead a lot of this PD. We're tired, quite honestly, and you want to be able to absorb new information and be at your best. And a Friday afternoon is not the best time to learn something new. That's what these half days are for. These half days are for teacher professional development. So I think it's really important that you listen to the staff about when's the most optimum time for you to learn. Just like our students, I wouldn't introduce new content to my students on a Friday afternoon. And you wouldn't have a school committee meeting on a Friday night. So, for consistency, the Wednesday half days, Park and Rec has done a wonderful job at offering all kinds of opportunities for students. The full day conferences, which we're still in the very beginning stages of, Park and Rec has done a wonderful job at offering opportunities for families to sign up for childcare if they need it. So, I am hopeful that, when we sit down and talk again, since there hasn't been a vote yet, that, what we say will have meaningful impact. But I wanted you to hear this directly from me, because the message may not be the same sort of through a committee. And believe me, student learning is at the forefront of everything we do. So I'm really hopeful that you will, take in mind that teachers are an additional stakeholder, in this equation. It's a three-way triad. That's really good what I have to say.
Great.
Well said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I just want to add one just factual comment about the conferences this year, so that we rolled that out to families late because of the change. So when we changed the school start date and we changed the conference idea, we had adopted this year's school calendar later than we had adopted previous year's school calendar. So I would hope that we might not run into the same situation where families are booking vacations during not during school vacation. That's when they should do it. Not during conference days because we're getting this information out ahead of time. So that's just, I don't offer that in response or to debate anything. I just want to remind everyone that we had produced a calendar late in the year last year and some people had booked trips, I guess. Let's try to get out in front of that this year. If there is anyone else on Zoom or in the room that would like to speak, it's the final opportunity. Hearing none, we'll close that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
So you brought up a lot of good points that I don't think we had even thought about. It's very true that it's a really long week for then you guys to come in energized for PD. Would Monday have days? Because you said Fridays and Mondays are typically like the lighter days for parents to be home. Is Monday a compromise? Is Monday something that works better than a Friday?
I would have to ask,
Yeah. Yeah, it was just, I'm just curious, because that's a very good point that you guys are just really tired by the end of the week, but if you could start the week with a PD day, and then that still kind of falls into the less of a commuter day.
I could reach out, to people and ask and have that information maybe for Beth. When we sit down and.
Thank you.
I think also, if it's okay.
Sure.
The conference days were the conference times were always 15 minutes, yes, even when we did the half day?
They were, so every level is different, right? So for us, it was 20 minutes.
When they were half days?
When they were half days, it was 20 minutes. It's just a longer period of time. You're looking at 9 hours versus 6 hours.
I see, right,
Or,
okay, when you said the
Yeah.
shift to one day, right, okay.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I was gonna say, you definitely bring up a really good point in terms of the, does Friday mean that parents will leave because it's a weekend? I think on the flip side, were there parents that couldn't come because it was a Wednesday too, right? Like, that was my situation at least, and I don't speak for the entire community, but I really value conferences. Like, I was devastated that I couldn't be there. I will go on Friday, like, I would love to be there. Not every parent. So I think it'll be, I don't know, maybe that's not true. Maybe parents will see Friday and then be like, yay, 3-day weekend, who cares about conferences? But I think also there's parents who find it challenging on a Wednesday too, to be there in person, so. Yeah, well, I agree in both things.
Okay. We'll move to subcommittee reports. The first one is PMBC.
We had a meeting since our last week, so I don't personally have any updates.
That's okay.
Okay.
You're just kind of standing on the agenda at all times, so if you don't have anything, no report, it's fine. Budget subcommittee, doesn't have a report other than the fact that I watched some of the finance committees, most recent meeting, they still seem to be debating sort of the overall budget. We had a successful, I would deem it a successful presentation to them, but I don't think anything's finalized at this point in time, so we'll continue to work through the budget and get in good shape to present in March, hopefully, our proposed budget. Policy subcommittee's been busy, sort of busy.
Yes. We did the C policies.
Yeah.
We might not make it through the alphabet by the end of the year, but we're moving along. So we have for you, policies for first reading, which are CA, CBD, CBI, and CHCA. No, that's the first reading of following modified, right, okay.
Those are bottom line.
Those are the ones that are modified, right? I'm happy to go through each one if needed, or if people had a chance to review to just answer any questions.
Could you just point out the parts that were modified?
We usually have a strike through, but we don't this time.
Gosh,
I mean, I don't, if it's not, this is just the first reading,
Yeah,
so
what-
maybe when it comes back to the second reading,
What
we can see the strike
Yeah.
through.
we will. What we typically did is we looked at the MASC policy, updated and adopted the new language. from the MSC update. So, but I do prefer the strike throughs, so it just makes it easier. So,
Yeah, how about this? Can we get this back out to us, with the strike throughs before
Yeah.
the meeting?
Yep.
Like before the next packet comes out, so we've got, yeah, that would be helpful. No changes.
On all of them, we had no changes?
We might have had one, but it's not here at all.
Okay, we didn't make very many changes, I remember that, but there was like a line that we removed, I
If they were
remember,
modified, something changed.
yeah. There were minimal,
Very little.
Okay,
We just add the source.
so we'll,
yeah,
assuming nothing major there, we'll, we can move on from those. We'll get the strike through,
Yeah.
if any information out to us, so we'll be prepared next meeting to have a second reading.
yep.
Uh,
And then for first reading, we have CE, CH, and CHD, which no changes were made to, and we did again compare to MASC, and it's in alignment with their policies with no changes as well.
Okay,
And then I can just do the last grouping, and go to questions, but CAA and CL, we were proposing to rescind those policies. They no longer exist in MASC. And one of them, I think it was CAA, was actually broken out into a new policy, right? Which we have on the list, and that's been updated. So that policy was then rescinded from MASC.
that was gonna be my question. Have these policies become parts of other policies? And is that the reason why? So we've got just eliminating some, redundancy within the policies.
And we checked not just MASC, we checked other districts too, and that was in line with what they had as well, that they were rescinded.
No questions from me.
So we can skip the first block because we'll get back to you with what those changes are.
I still think we can motion to accept, because we have the second opportunity to see them, and that way we don't have to push those yet out another meeting.
Okay.
That's just how I personally feel.
To move to accept the ones that.
Yeah.
That have not been.
Right,
revised.
the modification, well, even the modified ones, because it explained that the changes were minimal. And if there was not, if we see them and we have questions, we always have the opportunity to,
Second.
to pause on that
Right.
before it becomes full policy.
I can tell you.
Yeah, I think most of them were adding the references at the bottom. Really,
Sure.
It was minimal, but
Well, that's what I'm thinking, is there's no sense in kicking it to another meeting out if it wasn't really,
I mean, we don't vote on it on the first reading anyway, do we?
we have to move on to a second reading.
Right,
Yeah.
but not to accept it.
Correct.
Right.
It just-
no, it's to accept the first reading.
Right.
To finalize the policy.
First one is, and I neglected to strike it. The last line, development needs to support staff, that line came, that's it, on that one. So that's all that was, then we rescind for CAA, CBD was just updated to the mass source, same with the CBI. CE, no changes. CA, there's one that's not in there. CHD, no changes, and CHCA. We took out the first line. I don't know why. So I can bring those two back.
Okay.
If the other ones, that's it. The other one-
yeah,
Perfect.
Make the
I
motion?
can make a motion.
Yeah,
Okay.
go right ahead.
Motion to accept the first reading of the following modified policies, CA, CBD, CBI, CHCA.
Seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none, okay.
Motion to accept the first reading of the following policies as current, CE, CH, CHD.
Seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Motion to rescind the following policies, CAA, CL.
Seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Great.
We'll be back with D's next month. No.
Maybe.
All right, Shaker Lane Building Committee update.
I don't know.
Really, nothing to update at this point in time.
I saw some communication go back and forth, so it looks like at least the paperwork's moving along.
Yeah, we had a designer walk through yesterday with potential designers. We had a local firm show up.
Oh, wow.
So I forgot the date the proposals are due. They're due in a couple of weeks. And then the selection committee will work through those proposals, make recommendations to MSBA, and then MSBA will decide which design firm they choose for Littleton. So that's where the process is. So we're close to having an architect designer on board, and that's when the real work and the community forums and things like that will start happening.
Good. And tonight's special presentation,
So special.
Technology Subcommittee, Elaine?
Yeah, so you might remember 2 meetings ago, we heard from the principals about their technology plans, which made me think that I'm on the technology subcommittee. And so I looked up the definition of that, which was updates district's technology plan and makes recommendations for development and implementation of technology programs. So I requested a meeting with Julie Lord and Natalie Croto. And they spent an hour and a half with me. It was a really productive, interesting meeting. From this description of the subcommittee, it was my assumption that we had a 5-year technology plan, like many other districts do, that has an expiration date. So I was questioning, where are we in the span of our 5-year technology plan? And so Julie and Natalie spent time just kind of bringing me up to speed to where the way we do it here in Littleton, which made a lot of sense to me. And it also reminded me that when I've been involved in this in other districts, that they kind of share templates with each other, and it's not as authentic as one would think. So the way it's being done here in Littleton is that the things that can be planned are planned, and the things that aren't knowable are not fake planned, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the way so I was really pleased, especially when they showed me, the things that are planned out many years ahead that are knowable, like the lifespan of devices, like they know when those things are going to have to be replaced. And like the needs of the network, when changes are when there's going to be expenditures necessary to update a network, like things like that. They do have a long range plan, but things that are shorter range issues, technology just changes so quickly, especially in education. So, I think when districts make a 5-year plan on those things, it is like a fake plan. So I was really grateful for their honesty, and also really good planning with, they sent me off with this 6-page document just showing how they're tracking the different aspects of technology. So it's very planful. I was also very impressed with how it's a small technology team, but highly collaborative. Like everybody's holding up their end and making the system work, which was really impressive. So I was impressed and satisfied that all of the things that I was concerned about, the digital literacy, computer science framework, that was top of mind, that's being addressed, and that they are thinking ahead. So super impressed. But I guess my takeaway is that, we don't have a 5-year technology plan, and that's okay. I think, and it's okay because we have this highly skilled team that works so collaboratively together, communicates, and is aware of the things that they need to stay on top of. So I think next time we talk about subcommittees, we might want to just sort of change the definition of the the technology subcommittee, so it doesn't, for future school committee members, it doesn't make it sound like there's some technology plan with a beginning and an ending that school committee needs to advise on.
Gotcha. It's good
I
feedback.
appreciate that, because when we formed the technology subcommittee many years ago, one of the reasons we wanted school committee representation on it is because we were looking at significant expenditures. We really didn't have a plan, a system in terms of software acquisition, et cetera. We knew it was going to be expensive. And our first purchase for staff was a 3-year loan that required select board permission, public vote to purchase the Macs for all staff. So it's come a long way since then, but we look back to the origin of that subcommittee. We really needed a clear understanding from the school committee's point of view in terms of this is our vision, this is what we want to do, and this is what it's going to cost. How are we going to do this and advocate together? So appreciate that.
Well, I value the opportunity to go in and talk with them. It was a very rich and productive conversation. I think we all enjoyed it. So I'm glad to have had that opportunity, but I also don't want to, have the expectation that it's similar to a strategic plan that expires. So.
Good. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for doing the work. All right. There are no other subcommittee reports. Nothing else to be said. Our next school committee meeting is February 29th, the extra day this year. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, it's a wrap. Thank you.